Chapter 324. This voice was like an invisible Taoist rhyme between heaven and earth. Neither Dharma treasures nor space could block it. It penetrated the exquisite pagoda, the heavenly demon's secret realm, and entered the purple gold continent. It covered the heaven realm, the demon realm, the underworld, and various other small worlds. In an instant it ignored time, space, and even the barriers of heaven and earth. His words covered the great thousand world and many small thousand world. Emperor shocking the world, complete. This sentence was like the might of the heavens. It carried a mysterious Tao rhyme and was filled with boundless majesty. It was as if the heavens were speaking. All living beings, as long as they were intelligent, had this sentence in their minds. It was imprinted in the hearts of all living beings. Howl! Howl! As his voice fell, purple clouds appeared in the sky of countless worlds. It was an auspicious sign of purple clouds coming from the east. However, after the purple clouds passed, the entire void was covered by countless black clouds. Countless bolts of lightning flashed crazily in the clouds like wild horses that had broken free of their reins, rampaging everywhere. Rumble! Tens of thousands of lightning bolts exploded at the same time, flashing wildly. The thunder filled the world, and the dark clouds blocked all the light. The violent lightning appeared ferociously in front of everyone, as if doomsday had arrived. Endless fear and invisible majesty made countless living beings involuntarily kneel on the ground in an instant. In all kinds of unmarked graves, in the land of extreme negative energy, in the underworld, and even in the Huang Quan in the heavenly demon's secret realm, there were shrill cries of ghosts and gods in an instant. Looking at the Huang Quan, a large number of souls seemed to be enduring irresistible pain. They covered their heads, rolled in the water, and screamed shrilly. It filled the entire secret realm. Heaven and earth were shocked. The cries of ghosts and gods, the emperor shocking the world? Could it be that there is a supreme art that can shock heaven and earth? Is this the sign of heaven and earth and the cries of ghosts and gods? In the secret realm, all the living beings, whether they were cultivators or demons, heard the shrill cries at the same time. Looking at the black mass in the sky, lightning flashed and thunder roared. It was a terrible scene of doomsday. The majestic heavenly might filled the void. Those with low cultivation and low state of mind were pressed to the ground on the spot. Many knowledgeable people instantly connected the words that spread across the 3 realms and 6 paths before the great change of heaven and earth. For a moment they could not help but guess in surprise. In the southern barbarian, a large number of cultivators were constantly sending their disciples to rush into the formation to fight with a large number of skeleton legions in the formation. The battle to besiege the 8 white bone kings was in full swing. The attacks came one wave after another, and the battle was extremely fierce. A large number of skeleton legions in the formation were killed. The life core of these skeleton legions was the soul fire in their minds, which was the power of the tinder of life. Every time they were killed, even if their skeletons were shattered, the tinder of life was not extinguished. They could immediately rush into countless skeletons, reassemble their bodies, get up, and continue to fight. However, every time they died, the power of the tinder of life would be consumed. If it was really consumed to a certain extent, they would still die. Over the past few years, a large number of immortal cultivators had entered the formation one after another to attack without rest. Large numbers of fire seed skeletons had been killed. Now, there were not many that could hold on. The formation was still communicating with the power of heaven and earth. As long as the formation was not broken, the power of the formation was endless. Even if it was besieged for 3 or 4 years, it was still standing around the myriad demon valley. From this, it could also be seen that the formation was powerful. If there was no absolute strength to break it, it was almost impossible to break a formation. The terrifying scene of lightning and thunder also appeared on the purple gold continent. It was as if God was angry. In the myriad demon valley, Chun Shi, who was dressed in white, looked up at the amazing sign in the void. His eyes showed an unusual look of surprise, and he could not help muttering to himself, "The ghosts are crying and the gods are howling, and heaven and earth are changing color. This is a sign that only those earth-shattering supreme treasures and supreme divine skills that can destroy heaven and earth and surpass the great Tao of heaven and earth are born." Emperor's shocking book? What kind of miraculous technique is this? I have no memory of this technique. Could it be that the changes in heaven and earth are happening because of it? Pausing for a moment, he couldn't help but feel a sense of longing in his heart as he said, "I wonder what kind of peerless genius would be able to create such a shocking and unparalleled technique." Having received the legacy of Goddess Hundred Flowers, he naturally knew what kind of existence a supreme technique that could cause heaven and earth to change color was. It could be said that by relying on this technique, there was absolutely a chance that one could reach the peak of peerless cultivation. Even in ancient times, there would not be more than 10 people with such a cultivation method. Only those that surpassed the heavenly realm could cause heaven and earth to change and produce such a shocking sign. I just don't know which clan created such an incredible technique. If it's the human clan, then... At this point, Chen Shi's eyes showed a trace of deep worry. "I'm afraid that after the 6 ancestors of Tao and the 3 Buddhas of Buddhism, there will be another unparalleled powerhouse in the human clan. My demon clan." A trace of sadness appeared on her face, and she looked at the void. In the past few years, she also saw the rainstorm for several months. What she saw was not only rain, but also blood. Although there was no way to leave the southern wilderness, there was always a bad premonition in her heart. There was a major change in the demon clan. "Di Shirtian, where are you now?" Between her crystal-clear fingers, she gently played with a lavender petal, and inexplicable thoughts emerged in her mind. In her mind, she couldn't help but think of that hateful figure, and couldn't get rid of it. At the same time, on the purple-gold continent, many sects suddenly received an immortal message from the heavenly realm at the same time. What was the content of the immortal message? Except for the leaders of the sects, no one else knew. However, in the following period of time, all the sects that received the immortal message sent a large number of experts down the mountain, as if they were looking for something. The heavenly omen this time made the situation of the entire continent tense up. Haha, inside the exquisite Fortune Pagoda, Sakra looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. His expression was filled with a supremely domineering aura, and his eyes were filled with ecstasy. "I've succeeded. I've finally succeeded in creating a technique that belongs only to me, the Imperial Book of World Shocking. Sooner or later, I'll let your name follow me to sweep through the heavens and earth and deter all living things." After a burst of ecstasy, Di Shirtian finally restrained himself with his strong will. He quickly withdrew the aura from his body, but he couldn't hide the joy in his heart. A full 40 years. In order to create this book of the Royal Extreme World, he had spent a total of 40 years. In the first 10 years, he had integrated countless monster race martial arts into one in his mind. Although he didn't cultivate them, he had analyzed the yellow class martial arts bit by bit. Every point was simulated in his mind countless times. He had completely understood the essence of the martial arts and the key points of the martial arts. He would build up his foundation bit by bit. After he had solidified his foundation, he would deduce other higher cultivation methods. Just like that, he used his powerful deduction ability to deduce these cultivation methods over and over again, discarding all the impurities. This process took a full 20 years. In the latter 20 years, he had merged the 7 emotions and 6 desires with the essence of these cultivation methods. He continued to deduce every part of the cultivation method. This process took another 20 years. In addition, he had experience with the power of desire. Finally, he created an earth-shattering and unparalleled technique, the Huangji World Shocking Book. If one were to seriously calculate, the amount of energy needed to create a peerless book would not be an exaggeration even if one were to spend thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Difficult, it was simply too difficult. However, de Chertion could be said to be standing on the shoulders of giants. In the exquisite pagoda, there were countless powerful monster clan techniques. His vision was enough to stand at the top of the highest mountain. A large number of techniques were for him to refer to. In addition to his own understanding of the power of desire, he created 13 monster veins in his body at the same time. That year, he almost instantly understood all the 7 emotions and 6 desires. In the withered bone wilderness, he had a trace of the realm understanding of a peerless master. He didn't lack any of the conditions to create a technique. Even so, it still took a total of 20 years to truly create this earth-shattering supreme martial art that could make ghosts and gods weep. The Huangji World Shocking Book was divided into 13 levels, which corresponded to the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Every level had an unparalleled power. Compared to the previous level, the strength was almost a few times higher. It was very shocking, and definitely not inferior to any other unparalleled technique. Its power was really hard to estimate. However, this strange book could not be considered complete. It could only be said that the general framework was opened. There were still some rough branches and leaves that needed to be polished slowly and corrected bit by bit during cultivation. I already have the technique. This is the best time to cultivate. Only by completely merging the monster aura and the power of desire can it transform into the real Huangji true force. 40 years of accumulated power is enough for me to go one step further and step into a stronger realm. De Chertion took a deep breath. Once the Huangji World Shocking Book was completed, cultivation naturally had to be put on the agenda. In the past 40 years, in the exquisite pagoda, the spirit of heaven and earth was abundant. In addition, he had been eating spirit wine every day. His monster aura was very strong. Stepping into a higher realm was a matter of course. In addition, now that he had created the technique completely based on himself, he was about to completely merge the monster aura and the power of desire to create the unique Huangji true force of the Huangji World Shocking Book. This is a tragedy. I can't connect to the internet. I've been working on it for more than half an hour. There's no other way. I'll go to the internet cafe and upload the first chapter. I'll find a way to upload the second chapter tomorrow. I can only say sorry about this. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 325. The Shocking Book of the Royal Extreme was definitely a unique book. However, when combining the power of desire with the demonic aura to form the unique Royal Extreme true power, it was still unavoidable that the cultivator would have to walk into the realm of desire created by all kinds of desires. The cultivator would have to understand the meaning of the realm of desire, merge into it, and even transcend it. Among them, transcendence was the key. Integration and transcendence, in fact, was to see through and thoroughly understand the meaning. Once transcendence was achieved, it would be like God, high and mighty, but it would not be affected or even confused by it. Naturally, at that time, the desire that had been seen through and transcended could not affect the mind. Naturally, the huge power of desire could be used for oneself. Return to oneself. Integrate with the demonic spirit. The demonic spirit was refined from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the essence of the sun and moon, and the power of desire was formed from the desires in the hearts of countless creatures. The two were righteous and bright, and the other was dark and evil, strange and invisible. The combination of the two formed the royal true force, which could be said to be a powerful force that transcended the two. From this point, it was clear that the book of the Royal Shocking World was boundless. Naturally, de Chertion created the book of the Royal Shocking World. After realizing that there was no way to avoid entering the state of desire to transcend, he used a full 5 years to refer to countless books. Finally, he created a Heart Sutra that could guard the mind and not be confused by all things, the Royal Tyrant Heart Sutra. With the mentality of an emperor, he looked down on the sky, above all creatures, at the top of all creatures, and only he was supreme. Standing at the highest peak of heaven and earth, all things were in his eyes. Under the sky the earth could not bear his heart and the sky could not cover his eyes. Among all creatures, his heart was supreme. This was the real essence of the Royal Tyrant Heart Sutra, and also the supreme general principle of the Book of the Royal Shocking World. Once created, it must be powerful and supreme. It was also where De Chertien's confidence in stepping into the state of desire lay. With this Heart Sutra, he was confident that he would be able to protect his heart from the boundless desires and slowly transcend them. It was above all desires, turning the power of desire into his own power. From this, one could see how miraculous this book was. However, the Book of Shocking King was a book that could only be practiced by kings and dominators. If one did not have the heart of a king, they would not be able to understand the supreme meaning of the book. Instead, they would run the risk of going crazy and exploding themselves. De Chertien was the king of beasts, so he was born with the aura of a king. Later on, he naturally possessed the domineering aura of a sovereign. Therefore, it could be said that this wondrous book was a treasure that was tailor-made for him. Who? De Chertien didn't enter the courtyard. He directly turned into a majestic purple-striped black tiger inside the Linglong Treasure Pagoda. The purple royal mark on his forehead became even more intimidating as it exuded a boundless majesty. The black tiger lay on the ground and slowly closed his eyes while exhaling a long breath. Then, he slowly took a deep breath into his abdomen. Every breath contained the mysteries of heaven and earth. Innumerable pores all over Sakra's body, under this rhythmic breathing and exhalation, opened and closed in a regular pattern. The hair all over his body undulated up and down like waves, giving off a kind of natural charm. Of the 13 realms of desire, I have already mastered 3 of them, but I have yet to merge them into my own body. Now is the time to give up everything and cultivate the Book of Shocking King. Back then, I first formed the meridian of sorrow. This time, I will start from the state of sorrow and turn it into the power of desire. Then, I will merge it with the demon essence and become the true power of the king. De Chertien's mind was spinning rapidly. The starting point of the Book of Shocking King was extremely high. To cultivate it, the first step was to be a demon that had condensed a dantian. Moreover, once cultivated, the demon meridian that had been formed before would have to be rebuilt. The rebuilding here did not mean that the demon meridian would be broken and rebuilt. It meant that he had to start from the beginning and truly master the power of the demon meridian. Once mastered, he would step into the first transformation realm of Yaodan. De Chertien had read countless ancient demon cultivation techniques and found that for earth-level and above cultivation techniques, after condensing a dantian, one would not rely on forming the 4th demon meridian to step into the first transformation realm of Yaodan. One had to start from the beginning. This was because before condensing a dantian, forming the demon meridian was only for the sake of breaking through. Without truly mastering the power and charm of the demon meridian, one would not be able to unleash one's true potential. For example, De Chertien had formed the meridian of desire. Others could form the meridian of slaughter and thunder, but to master these powers, one's cultivation had to reach the stage of transforming the dantian. Otherwise, one would only gain a superficial understanding. One would not be able to grasp the charm of the power. One would only be able to unleash 50% or 60% of one's cultivation. The slightest difference could lead to a great loss. And after starting from the beginning and mastering all 3 demon meridians that one had previously formed, one's cultivation realm would naturally step into the third transformation realm of Yaodan, the peak of the first transformation realm of Yaodan. One more step forward would be enough to form the fourth demon meridian and truly step into the demon lord realm. The ancient demon clan could be said to have reached a peak in terms of cultivation. A complete system was also the capital that allowed the demon race to dominate the world in the ancient times. The cultivation techniques of the human race were originally derived from the demon race. If the demon race's inheritance had not been broken, the human race would never have been able to monopolize the purple gold mainland, and they would not have fallen to their current state. It was because of this understanding that Di Shurtian deeply felt how extensive and profound the demon race's heritage was. The imperial book of Shocking the World had absorbed the essence of countless cultivation techniques. Naturally, it would not be as superficial as those low-level cultivation techniques that only knew how to form the demon meridian but did not know how to master the power within. In the natural breathing, he instinctively absorbed the abundant spiritual chi of heaven and earth from the exquisite pagoda. At the same time, his mind was already immersed in his body. The situation within his body was flawless in his mind. The 13 demon meridians crisscrossed within his body, connecting to every corner of his body and channeling his chi and blood. However, one could clearly see that among the 13 demon meridians, only 3 of them were shining with a dark luster. Streams of pure power flowed within them. At the same time, they were constantly absorbing the power of desire that was everywhere. Each demon meridian had a different artistic conception. The remaining 10 were abnormally dim. Although his chi and blood could flow, he could not control it in his hand. However, at the 4th meridian, there was a trace of demon essence that was constantly colliding with the barrier of the demon meridian, as if it was constantly bombarding the threshold of the 4th demon meridian. After comprehending for a while, Di Shurtian's mind followed the demon meridian that connected to his heart and entered the demon mansion. The interior of the demon mansion was quite spacious. A large amount of spiritual chi of heaven and earth, as well as the power of desire, continuously flowed out from all directions and was swept into the jade demon refining cauldron in the center of the demon mansion. If one looked closely, they would discover that the demon refining cauldron had expanded along with the demon mansion. Its size had also increased. When it spun, the suction force it emitted was even stronger. Within the cauldron, a pool of ink-black demon liquid had already filled more than half of the space within the jade cauldron. Like a mound of spring water, on the surface of the demon liquid, a pitch-black third-grade black lotus silently floated. The black lotus continuously spun, swallowing the demon liquid below into the black lotus. This caused the black bead in the middle of the black lotus to flash with traces of tyrannical fluctuations. Above the black lotus was an incomparably black cloud. This black cloud was constantly tumbling. Drops of black liquid did not drip into the demon liquid below. Instead, they fell directly on the black lotus and were absorbed by the black lotus itself. Not a single drop was wasted. This was the liquid formed when the power of desire was condensed to a certain extent. Looking at the third-grade black lotus, each grade had a completely different aura. Sorrow, desire for good food, and joy. Each one was extremely strange. They were of the same origin, yet different. It was as if they all contained a great truth of heaven and earth. It's you. Today, I will start from this sad state and take the first real step. Looking at the black lotus, the realm of desire that he had never dared to touch lightly in the past was now filled with a strong sense of confidence. He dared to directly face the unpredictable future. This was because of the Wenxin path back then, and also because of his confidence in the Huangji book of Shocking the World. He had already come into contact with the 3 kinds of desires in the black lotus. Especially the sad state, he had a great understanding of it. Back then, even without the suppression of the Lu Qichin, he could still be unaffected. This experience would be immeasurably helpful for this experience of entering the realm of desire to train. Muttering to himself, De Chertien's consciousness rushed into the black lotus that symbolized the sad state without hesitation. There was a sense of confidence and fearlessness in his actions. Swoosh! The moment Sakra's mind entered the black lotus, the originally slow rotation of the black lotus suddenly came to a halt. This kind of stillness caused the liquid under the black lotus to surge violently. However, the stillness only existed for a blink of an eye. Without much pause, it immediately recovered. However, the rotation this time wasn't clockwise anymore. Instead, it was counterclockwise. Like a thunderbolt, it started to rotate at lightning speed. The speed was so fast that it caused the demon liquid below the black lotus to distort into a vortex. It was violently rotating. The black lotus was also on the spot. It burst forth with countless rays of light, emitting bursts of enchanting luster. It was unusually evil. Sorrow, silence. Who can share my sorrow? The son is unfilial, the old has no one to rely on. Sorrow? Sorrow! Afflicted by hundreds of diseases, alone and without anyone to rely on, sorrow? Sorrow! De Chertien did not know what was happening in the outside world. In fact, even if he knew, he could not care less at this time. His entire consciousness was completely immersed in the black lotus in an instant. As soon as he entered the realm of desire, he immediately heard a sad song. The song was sung by thousands of creatures at the same time. One question and one answer, as if attacking the heart. Sorrow, sorrow, sorrow. There were countless sad things in the world. The sadness in the heart was not enough. It was a kind of sadness that went straight to the heart and could not be resisted by any means. When it fell into the heart, even the mind would be confused by it. Sakra glanced at his surroundings. He was standing at the edge of a deep abyss, standing proudly. In the deep abyss, it was unknown how many silhouettes were there, each of them exuding a sorrowful aura. Countless amounts of sorrowful aura gathered together, creating this overwhelming and unresolvable sorrowful scene. These figures formed in the sadness saw De Chertien and chanted sad songs, rushing toward him. These figures were all formed from sad thoughts, and could not be resisted. As soon as they touched the body, they immediately turned into sad thoughts and rushed into the mind, into the heart and soul, and turned into a sad aura that wrapped around the heart and soul. The sad thoughts began to corrode his heart and soul. They wanted to draw him into the sad state. Good. I'll use you to see how this king's tyrannical heart incantation compares to the ice heart incantation, which is said to be able to make the heart as cold as ice and untainted by all things. When De Chertien saw this, he smiled calmly and said the imperial tyrannical heart incantation, look at the heart of an emperor, gather the will of an overlord, look down on the firmament, stand above all living things, at the peak of all living things, only I am supreme. Stand at the peak of heaven and earth, all things in the world are in my eyes, untainted and untainted, my heart is eternal. Under heaven and earth, they can't bear my heart, the sky can't cover my eyes. All living things, my heart is supreme. Tyrannical heart, tyrannical heart. He spat out word by word. Every word was full of the overbearingness of an emperor. His entire heart and soul seemed to have turned into a supreme overlord above all living things in an instant. In the eyes of an emperor overlord, there was nothing in the world that could be compared to him except for himself. The 7 emotions and 6 desires could only be used by him, but it could not shake his heart and soul. These sad auras kept entangling his body, but there was no way for them to enter his heart and soul. It was as if De Chertien had an invisible deterrence that prevented these sad auras from really getting close. It was as if no evil could invade his heart and soul. For a time, De Chertien used the tyrannical heart incantation to protect his heart and soul, and used the heart of an emperor to resist the desires. His heart was clear. Except for the tyrannical heart, nothing else could exist in his heart and soul, so the endless sad auras couldn't hurt him for a time. Come. Today, this king will see through you in this boundless sorrow and transcend above you. After a long time, when the endless sad auras turned into strands of strange sad auras like silk, they wrapped around his body like a big cocoon. His whole body couldn't be seen, and it was incomparably thick. It was unknown how much sad auras were exerted on him. But this was exactly what he wanted the most. If only the tyrannical heart incantation supported his heart and soul and maintained that state of mind, it could indeed be said that no evil could invade him. But it could only be said that it could maintain the will under the sad state, and it didn't mean that it could break through the sad state. To turn this sad desire into the power of desire for one's own use, to do that, one must really understand it and transcend it. Only then could one control it. It was useless to blindly resist. De Chertion let himself be in the tyrannical heart incantation. First, he guided the sad auras outside his body into his heart and soul, no longer resisting. Suddenly, there was a violent change in his heart and soul, and his whole consciousness was pulled to a mysterious place. I'm a bit confused. I just looked at the page and found that it's my birthday in 2 days. To be honest, if I didn't see it suddenly, I really would have forgotten. Don't say any more. First update, 4,000 words. Chapter 326. In a remote mountain village, there were more than 20 families. In the mountain village, there was a courtyard by the mountain. The courtyard looked old and dilapidated. It was obvious that it had been there for many years. The house was a wooden house, and the courtyard was surrounded by a fence. In the courtyard there were some farmhouse vegetables. Looking at the vegetables in the ground, they had already turned green and yellow, and had a sense of lethargy. Cough, cough. The simple wooden house appeared extremely dark and gloomy. An old man's entire body was as thin as a match. His face was sallow and his mouth continuously coughed. It was as if he was terminally ill. Even the blanket covering his body was incomparably filthy. There was not the slightest bit of life in the surroundings, and it was filled with the lethargy of death. Beside the rice vat, a mouse glanced inside. It shook its head in disdain and turned around to leave. It did not look back. Bang! Amidst the sounds of coughing, the door of the house was pushed open rudely. A chubby middle-aged man with fair skin walked in. Behind him was a seductive woman with a thick layer of foundation on her face. This woman swept her gaze across the house and revealed a look of disdain in her eyes. She stopped in front of the house in disgust, as if it was disgusting to step inside. "Old man, how is your body? Do you want your son to invite a doctor to take a look at you?" The middle-aged man walked into the house and saw the old man lying on the bed. His eyes lit up and he walked up to him eagerly. But no matter how he said it, it felt uncomfortable. "Humph! Why did you come back? Didn't you cut off all ties with me long ago? Didn't you marry into the Lin family and enjoy your wealth? Even if I die, I don't need you to care." Cough, cough. The old man looked at the middle-aged man, and his expression became agitated. He said it too quickly, and another round of violent coughing sounded. His whole body was as weak as a small tree, and he could die at any time. When the middle-aged man heard this, his expression changed. He didn't care about being gentle anymore and said rudely, "Humph, old man, since you said so, I'll save the money for your treatment. This time, I won't hide it from you. Didn't you tell me before that we have a family heirloom passed down from our grandfather's generation? You look like you're about to die. Why don't you give me that painting? I can help you find a good place with good feng shui after you pass away." Scram, scram. The old man was so angry that his eyes turned white. He pointed at him while trembling and scolded, "Unfilial son, you unfilial son. You have already betrayed your family, and you still have the face to come back and ask for the family heirloom. Let me tell you, don't even think about it. Get the hell out of here." He grabbed a broken porcelain bowl from his side and threw it at the middle-aged man. You old fart, you're courting death." The middle-aged man flew into a rage out of humiliation. He grabbed the porcelain bowl and threw it back at the old man. Bang! With a muffled sound, the broken bowl hit the old man's forehead. Immediately, blood spurted out. The old man fell on the bed without a sound. Blood kept flowing out. To have a son like this, is it sad? Sakra's mind couldn't help but send out a sentence. That kind of despair and sadness immediately spread out in his entire mind and swept out continuously like a tide. This kind of sadness was a sad song that a life uttered at the end of its life. Tyrant! 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 My heart is eternal. However, no matter how strong this sadness was, no matter how it swept through his mind, it couldn't hide the only heart in his heart. Under this kind of supreme tyrant heart, even if he was in the sea of sadness, he was still like a reef that had existed since ancient times. He always stood firm. He let the sadness attack his mind. The longer the attack, the more flexible his tyrant heart became. After a long time, Tion opened his eyes. His gaze was deep, but he was unusually sober. Obviously, he was not eroded by the sadness. He muttered to himself, "What a powerful state of desire. It directly made my mind enter the sadness and replace the object of the sadness. I experienced everything with his identity and even sealed my memory. If I didn't have the extreme Emperor Tyrant Heart technique to protect my mind and nothing can shake it, I'm afraid that this time I would really be in danger. However, now that I know, what can you do to me? These sad thoughts can temper my Tyrant Heart technique and cultivate my own Emperor's Qi. It can promote the momentum of only me." After dozens of years, coupled with countless practice methods, Tion created the strange book, Extreme Emperor Shocking the World. The Extreme Emperor Tyrant Heart technique was specially created for this kind of experience in the state of desire. It was the supreme heart technique to cultivate the heart. Being able to stand like Mount Tai under the sadness, it could be seen that it really deserved its reputation. The peerless martial art was indeed a peerless martial art. It could lead to a heavenly omen, which showed that it was not an undeserved reputation. After trying it, Tion's heart became more confident. Without hesitation, after taking a deep breath, he pulled the sadness into his mind again. However, this time it was not 1 strand but 10 strands. After doing this, Tion closed his eyes again and immersed himself in the world of sadness. He instinctively maintained his tyrant heart realm to protect his mind. As long as the tyrant heart was not extinguished, no matter how difficult the situation was, his mind could not be extinguished. Even if he was on the verge of falling, he could be pulled back in an instant. Time passed by bit. Sakra was undergoing tests again and again in the realm of desire in the Black Lotus, tempering his heart and experiencing endless sorrowful things. Until he was able to transcend the sorrowful realm and completely see through the sorrowful realm, he was able to completely transcend the realm of desire and turn the sorrowful power into the power of desire. In the state of desire, he felt that he had spent a year or 100 years. In fact, in the exquisite pagoda, it was only a matter of a moment. A day in the exquisite pagoda was only a blink of an eye in the outside world. While he was immersed in the state of lust, the outside world didn't stop. Even on the Spider Lily Island, many people had benefited from it. Some had found heavenly treasures, some had had fortuitous encounters, and some had even found the Sky Lake. All sorts of fortuitous encounters happened almost every day on the Spider Lily Island. However, it was inevitable that killings would happen from time to time. Since the quota was decided, there were not many restrictions on the island. Even if people killed, they would not be punished. Killings and robberies happened from time to time. At this time, in the Smoky Wave Lake, the extremely luxurious Crystal Palace was still as magnificent and majestic as ever. It was so majestic and beautiful that it was difficult to describe it with words. Bang! In the Dragon King Palace there was a loud bang. The old Dragon King was sitting on the dragon throne in the palace. 2 rays of anger flashed in his eyes. His awe-inspiring dragon aura seemed to erupt with a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Beside him stood a dragon girl. Who else could it be but Ao Qing? However, in the palace, there was a man in green robes with an arrogant expression. His forehead was unconsciously covered in cold sweat. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on him. It was extremely strenuous. You human cultivators have stretched your hands too far. Don't forget that the Smoky Wave Lake belongs to the Dragon Clan. You are just a puny combination cultivator. How dare you act so presumptuously in front of this Dragon King? Don't blame me for not warning you. No cultivators are allowed to come within 1,000 miles of the Smoky Wave Lake. I will issue a ban. From today onwards, no killing is allowed in the area I have designated. Otherwise, don't blame the Dragon Clan for being merciless. The old Dragon King's dragon whiskers trembled with rage. He harumphed coldly and waved a hand. Piss off and deliver my message. I will only give you 1 day. If there are still cultivators within 1,000 miles of the Smoky Wave Lake after I issue this ban, don't blame me for being merciless. His eyes were filled with fury as he roared, and he instantly withdrew his terrifying dragon's might. In just an instant, a body integration stage cultivator had cold sweat pouring down his back, and he was completely powerless to resist. The might of a Dragon King was truly unpredictable. The azure-robed man heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. All of his arrogance had been erased, and he hurriedly turned to leave. Hold on! At this moment, the old Dragon King suddenly called out to him. This voice immediately made the green-clothed man stop in his track. His body stiffened as he turned around. He finally understood that if the old Dragon King wanted to kill him, it would be no different from killing an ant. With an ugly expression on his face, he respectfully said, "Does the old Dragon King have any other orders?" Even his tone was a little unnatural. "I won't kill you. I just want you to deliver a message." The old Dragon King's gaze became abnormally deep. He said in a deep voice, "Don't forget who contributed to your human clan's current achievements. Your actions back then have already established your status as the main characters of the world. You can't say everything, and you can't do anything to the extreme. You have to know that under the heavenly Tao, karma is the cycle of reincarnation. If you go too far, be careful of the day when the tables turn. Leaving a way out for others may not necessarily be the same as leaving a way out for yourself." A hint of disdain appeared on the azure-robed man's face when he heard this. However, on the surface, he still said respectfully, "Thank you for your advice, Dragon King. I will deliver your message." After he finished speaking, he saw that there was nothing else for him to do and quickly turned to leave. After the green-robed man's figure had completely disappeared, Ao Qing curled her lips and said with disdain, "Human cultivators are really stubborn. They really want to exterminate the Yao clan. What do they mean by, 'those not of our race must have a different heart'? In my opinion, this is just an excuse for them to kill. This time, they even want to send cultivators to guard the Smoky Wave Island. They want to wipe out all the demon clan that will come out of the mystic realm in a year's time. Father, in my opinion, it's better for us to stay away from these human cultivators. Who knows when they will dare to invade our dragon clan?" The old Dragon King's expression was solemn. He sighed and said, "Human cultivators are too tyrannical. They can't tolerate the rise of other clans. Today's massacre of the demon clan can be said to be something that has long been predestined. I really don't know where they get their confidence from. They don't worry about the future calamity and instead focus on exterminating the demon clan. I'm worried that when the time comes, all living beings will be wiped out. Humans are too far from the demon clan in the ancient times." His words were full of hesitation. He shook his head and sighed. However, Ao Ching didn't care. She said softly, "Humph, if such a day really comes, father, our dragon clan must not help those cultivators. Who knows, they might do something to us. Anyway, our dragon ancestor has already made preparations. At worst, we can all go to Ancestral Dragon Island together." "Ha ha!" The old Dragon King shook his head and didn't say anything else. He immediately found Prime Minister Turtle and issued the Dragon Clan's ban. Rumble. At an unknown location in the Sky Demon's secret realm, a purple-gold 9-story pagoda stood proudly. Above the pagoda, a huge black cloud had mysteriously appeared. Within the cloud, countless lightning bolts were crazily flashing. It was a tribulation cloud. The tribulation cloud churned violently. Before long, the black tribulation cloud strangely turned into a 5-colored tribulation cloud. All kinds of vast power constantly shot out from the tribulation cloud. Just the pressure alone caused the surrounding space to distort. Looking at it, one couldn't help but feel fear. Heavenly tribulation. 5-colored heavenly tribulation, 5-elemental lightning tribulation. The 5-colored tribulation cloud showed that the tribulation lightning in front of them was an extremely terrifying type of tribulation called the 5 elements lightning tribulation. This tribulation lightning was even more terrifying than Chun-Shi's first 9 monster tribulation. Back then, it was only the Gung-Jin divine lightning that appeared. The 5 elements lightning tribulation had all 5 elements, and not a single one was missing. Under the continuous bombardment, even a demon king who had reached the 4th transformation realm of the demon race wouldn't dare to say that he could withstand it. This kind of tribulation was too overbearing. Logically speaking, the monster tribulations from the first 9 monster tribulation to the 9th 9 monster tribulation would have at most one change. For example, during the first 9 monster tribulation, there would usually be one type of divine lightning. During the second 9 monster tribulation, there would normally be 2 types of divine lightning. The 5 elements demonic tribulation should only be encountered when one reached the 5th transformation of monster core. For him to actually appear here, it was clearly an extremely abnormal matter. Kacha. A tearing sound came from the void. A Gung-Jin divine lightning as thick as a water bucket came crashing down on the Linglong treasure pagoda. Ding! The power of this Gung-Jin divine lightning was not inferior to the one Chun-Shi encountered in the past. It was so powerful that if it landed on a mountain, it would instantly turn it into dust. However, the body of the Linglong treasure pagoda shook, and the purple-gold divine light flowed rapidly on the surface of the pagoda like water, bursting out countless divine lights. The Gung-Jin divine barrier fell on the pagoda and mysteriously disappeared. It was as if the divine lightning didn't exist at all. No one knew whether it was swallowed up or resisted on the spot. However, the tribulation cloud seemed to have been provoked. It angrily rained down bolts of divine lightning that were more powerful than the previous. Thunder and fire covered the sky and earth, crazily smashing towards the pagoda. However, the pagoda was really miraculous. No matter how the divine lightning smashed, not only did the pagoda not suffer any damage, but the purple halo on the surface of the pagoda became even more condensed, as if it would never be extinguished. It had a kind of feeling that no matter how strong he was, it would be like a gentle breeze brushing past the mountains. In the first floor of the pagoda, a huge purple-striped black tiger lay motionless on the ground. Outside its body, a huge 5-colored beam of light descended from the sky, directly covering it in the colorful light and surging into its body. At the same time, the incomparably rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the pagoda was like a hurricane, crazily rushing into the black tiger's body in the middle. The black tiger's body was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much spiritual energy of heaven and earth there was, as soon as it came into contact with its body, it was immediately swallowed into its body without leaving a single drop behind. Not even half a bubble floated out. In Di Shirtian's body, in the demon-refining cauldron, the incomparably black lotus spun wildly, emitting threads of evil light. In one of the 3 grades of the black lotus, there was a surge of evil energy that was continuously surging into the black pearl in the middle of the black lotus. The black pearl contained his entire body's demonic chi. The 2 forces were entangled together, but it was difficult to merge. At the same time, a burst of 5-colored light rushed into the demonic palace, directly pouring into the black lotus. Once this mysterious 5-colored light entered the black lotus, it was like a chemical catalyst, causing the desire force and demonic chi to be in a miraculous equilibrium. Good, I've been waiting for this moment. The desire force is inclined towards evil, it is the dark side of a living creature's body. It is the most difficult to merge with demonic chi, but as long as the power of creation contained in the heavenly tribulation is added, it can play a catalytic role, truly merging the 2 completely different forces together, forming the most miraculous Huangji true force. Di Shirtian's mind was unprecedentedly calm. The thunder tribulation that was constantly bombarding outside the pagoda was his demonic tribulation, and it was the first 9 demonic tribulation. In the state of desire, due to his own resistance to sorrowful thoughts, coupled with the indestructible state of mind of the tyrant heart's secret art, he was constantly reincarnated in the sorrowful thoughts. Almost every time he entered a sorrowful thought, it could be said to be a reincarnation, obtaining a life's enlightenment. His own realm, unknowingly, was rapidly improving, constantly rising, until a transformation. Di Shirtian clearly remembered that he had reincarnated in these sorrowful thoughts tens of thousands of times. Almost in his life, he had personally experienced all sorrows. After each experience, with the help of the tyrant heart, he could always integrate this enlightenment into his own state of mind. As long as he experienced it once, he would never be eroded by it again. Like a fish in the sea, he could swim freely. From the experience to the enlightenment to the integration and even to the final transcendence and sublimation. After experiencing tens of thousands of reincarnations, the understanding of the sorrowful state had finally reached a kind of limit. His mind was instantly clear and incomparably transparent. He suddenly had a feeling of enlightenment, naturally detached from the sorrowful state, standing above the sorrowful state, and would no longer be affected by it. Of course, this was not to abandon emotions, but to make it more emotional. His heart was pure. His realm was soaring. Immediately, the power of sorrow was also mastered by him in an instant, and could be perfectly used. At the same time, Di Shirtian finally reached the peak of his own realm, broke through in one fell swoop, and attracted heaven's tribulation. Heaven's tribulation, Di Shirtian was not afraid. On the contrary, he was incomparably looking forward to it. Because, in the Huangji Shocking World Book that he created, to form the Huangji True Force, it required the power of creation contained in the heaven's tribulation. Only the power of creation could reconcile the power of desire and the demonic spirit, so that the two could be smoothly integrated and transformed into the most magical Huangji True Force. Second update, 5,000 words, plus the previous one, it's exactly 9,000 words. I've made up for yesterday's chapters. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 327. Sure enough, as soon as the power of fortune that was continuously pouring into his body entered the Black Lotus, it immediately became like a vast sea, wrapping the power of desire and the monster chi under it in an instant. In the power of fortune, whether it was the power of desire or the monster chi, the two forces that were originally mutually exclusive and incompatible seemed to have become full of spirituality in an instant. At the same time, they opened themselves up and greedily devoured the power of fortune around them, swallowing the power of fortune into them. Every time they devoured a bit of the power of fortune, the spirituality of the two forces increased by a bit. The two forces that were originally completely different had an additional aura of the same source at the same time. It was this trace of the same source of power that made the power of desire and the monster chi, which were originally unable to merge together, slowly and magically get closer to each other. Hiss! At the edge of the two forces that came into contact with each other, the power of fortune acted as a bridge, connecting each other. Suddenly, an incomparably mystical scene appeared under the gaze of one's mind. When the two forces came into contact with each other, there was not much of a barrier anymore. They merged together in an instant, and a faint golden liquid slowly appeared in the middle. As soon as this drop of liquid was formed, a natural aura of the Supreme Emperor burst out naturally. In an instant, this drop of liquid was like an emperor. It was full of the aura of the Supreme Emperor. This kind of aura of the Supreme Emperor could not be concealed by any force. Even if it was only a drop, it still revealed a kind of awe-inspiring domineering aura that was above the power of desire and the monster chi. It was so arrogant that nothing in the world could conceal its sharpness. Under this kind of aura, Tian only felt that. Even his mind had been sublimated in an instant. In his heart, in his body, the aura that had been in a budding state seemed to have received sufficient nutrients, rising little by little. The aura of the Supreme Emperor that had not been visible in his body began to grow continuously. Not long after, it directly appeared outside his body. If someone was in the exquisite pagoda at this time, they would discover that Tian's body went from nothing to something. First, the domineering aura of the Supreme Emperor only circulated on the surface of his body. Then, every few breaths, it spread to the surroundings. It covered a range of dozens of meters. Within this range, even the flowers and plants could not help but lower their heads in his direction. He bent his body. It was an aura of supremacy that made all living beings unable to muster up any strength to resist. In front of it, all living beings had to lower their proud heads. The heavenly tribulation contained boundless destructive power. It was a test of heaven and earth. However, in the heavenly tribulation, while it was destructive, it also contained a powerful force of creation. It contained the source of life. The power of creation could be said to be one of the most miraculous powers in the world. According to legend, the countless living beings on the violet gold mainland were actually formed from the power of creation. It was the supreme manifestation of the profundities of creation when the heavens and earth were first created. The biggest characteristic of this kind of power was its tolerance. It had the characteristic of being able to take in all rivers into the sea. It was also incomparably gentle. It was most suitable to be used to fuse the power of desire and demonic chi. This was the result that Tian had deduced countless times. Not only was he not afraid of the heavenly tribulation, but the more violent it was, the happier he was. With the protection of the exquisite pagoda, the destructive power was directly blocked, and the power of thunder and lightning was converted into the power of creation and poured into his body. This first drop of the true power of the royal emperor also perfectly proved that the result of his deduction truly had a miraculous effect. It was feasible. The true power of the royal emperor, this is the true power of the royal emperor. The shocking book of the royal emperor that I created can indeed be cultivated. These 40 years have not been in vain. Tian was ecstatic, but his mind was still very calm. He continued to guide the power of creation into his body, urging the power of desire and demonic chi to fuse continuously. This fusion speed, after the appearance of the first drop of the true power of the royal emperor, instantly became much faster. In addition, the power of creation was almost endless. For a moment, the black lotus in Tian's body suddenly spun more than twice as fast. It spun quickly, driving the demonic chi in the cauldron into the black lotus. The demonic liquid was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Outside the exquisite pagoda, the thunder and lightning were still crazily hitting the pagoda like raindrops. However, the pagoda transformed them into a huge amount of power of creation and poured it into Di Shirtian's body. This heavenly tribulation, the rotation of the 5 elements, had lasted for a full half a day. No one knew how many divine lightning bolts had struck down. Under normal circumstances, no matter how powerful a person was, they would have been blasted to smithereens. However, it did not cause the exquisite pagoda the slightest bit of damage. Roar! Unknowingly, the purple-striped black tiger, who had been lying quietly on the ground with its eyes closed, suddenly stood up. 2 rays of golden divine light shot out from its 2 bright tiger eyes, like 2 searchlights. Instantly, it was astonishing. Its body expanded explosively, and in just a few breaths, it had more than doubled in size. The fur on its body rippled like waves. The moment it stood up, it was as if an emperor had risen in an instant. A tyrannical tiger roar came out of its mouth. In the surrounding air, circles of distorted ripples were constantly rippling. The tiger roar lasted for no less than a quarter of an hour before it gradually stopped. Light flashed all over its body, and a naked body stood proudly in midair. Its facial features were chiseled, as if they were carved by a knife. Its face was not outstanding, but it was filled with a strong charm. On its forehead, a mysterious purple royal mark was pulsating like a flame, exuding endless majesty. His shoulder-length black hair fluttered without any wind, casually draped behind his head, dancing wildly. From top to bottom, his perfect demonic body, which seemed to be cut from gold, burst forth with an extremely domineering fluctuation. Every inch of his flesh and blood contained explosive power. The first stage of the Book of Huangji shocking the world has finally been completed. Di Shirtian wantonly released his powerful aura without reservation. After a while, he waved his hand, took out a black robe, and put it on. Traces of golden divine light flashed in his eyes from time to time, and there was a strong sense of confidence in it. He reached out his right hand and clenched it. His expression was firm, and he said, "Now that the Book of Huangji shocking the world has been completed, from now on, my fate is in my own hands." He raised his eyes to the void, and his gaze was incomparably deep. He said coldly, "Wanshou sect, wait for me. The first thing I will do is to wipe out your Wanshou sect. If my mother is fine, then that's fine. Otherwise, even if you have to use all of Bai Luo and Huang Quan, I will slaughter your entire Wanshou sect." There was an unprecedented sense of confidence in his words. The Wanshou sect, which had always been above his head and in his heart, could no longer make him bow his head. With the Book of Huangji shocking the world, although he had only cultivated to the first stage, he could clearly feel that his strength had increased by more than 10 times in an instant when the desire power and demonic aura had all transformed into the Huangji true force. Once the faint golden Huangji true force was formed, it replaced the position of the desire power and demonic aura, becoming the true power that could be controlled. What was controlled was also the sorrow meridian. The sorrow in the sorrow meridian could no longer affect him. Instead, he felt like a fish in water. The entire demonic meridian was almost completely opened up. Waves of sorrowful desires swept into the demonic meridian at an unprecedented speed, like a whale sucking in water. The absorption speed, compared to before, was like a small stream in the past, but now it was like a river. The absorption speed of the desire power had increased by more than 100 times. Moreover, there was no need to use his mind to control it. The demonic meridian was almost constantly absorbing the desire power outside of him. Once it was absorbed into his body, it circulated in the demonic meridian a few times, and then went to the demon refining cauldron to purify the impurities, and all of it fell into the black lotus. In the black lotus, the black bead in the middle of the black lotus that looked like a lotus seed had disappeared. The faint golden Huangji true force had already filled the grade of the sorrow power in the Black Lotus. It emitted an aura like that of an emperor. The moment the sorrowful desire power fell into the Black Lotus, it was quickly refined by the Huangji true force. It turned into strands of pure Huangji true force. The Huangji true force rushed out of the Black Lotus and circulated in the demonic meridian. Wherever it passed, the tyrannical true force would circulate, and at the same time, a strand of it would enter the flesh of the body. The level of the Huangji true force was high, far beyond the demonic aura. When it entered the flesh, it actually strengthened the body of the demonic meridian by who knows how many times. It was far beyond the strength of the demonic meridian. The miraculous power of the Huangji World Shocking Book could be seen from this. The first grade has been completed. The Black Lotus has been accumulated by me for decades. Every grade contains a huge amount of desire power. With them, even if I continue to work hard and master the other two desires, it should not be difficult to break through to the third grade. Sakra landed on the ground, and his mind spun as he pondered to himself. However, the Sky Demon Mystic Realm only opens for 5 years each time. Now that more than 4 years have passed, it will end in less than a year. If I continue, time will be too tight. I might as well familiarize myself with the first grade of the Huangji True Force and integrate its power into my own fighting power. When I completely master it, I will cultivate the first grade to the peak and then break through to the second grade. This should be more important for my foundation. Light flickered in his eyes. Before he cultivated the Huangji World Shocking Book, the Black Lotus in Di Shirtian's body had accumulated a huge amount of desire power. In the past, when the desire power entered the Black Lotus, it could not be used. Therefore, the more it accumulated, the more powerful it became. In addition to the 40 years he had spent in the exquisite treasure pagoda, he had been constantly absorbing the desire power between heaven and earth. This power had become even more powerful. It could be said that as long as he was willing, he could use this huge amount of desire power to break through to the second grade or even the third grade. However, after thinking about it carefully, he did not do so. After reading a lot of ancient books, he was very clear about the importance of the foundation. Cultivation was not about blindly advancing by leaps and bounds. It was about accumulating strength. Only with a solid foundation could one have the capital to climb to a higher peak. Therefore, after thinking about it again, he gave up on that tempting idea and decided to first refine his current strength and thoroughly transform it into his own strength. He would first accumulate it for a period of time. With the exquisite treasure pagoda, there was no need to worry about not having enough time. Well, the most important thing now is to consolidate the realm of the breakthrough first, then think about other things. After cultivating the Huangji World Shocking Book, Di Shirtian's nature could be said to be completely released. Once he made up his mind, there was no longer any hesitation, and he was very decisive. Ding dong, clang clang. Just as he was about to go into seclusion to cultivate for a period of time, suddenly, there was a burst of intense zither music in his mind. There was a kind of anxiety in the zither music, and it was quite urgent. Hey, this is the sound of the 7 sins demonic zither. Has it completed its transformation and been promoted to a magic treasure? Di Shirtian's expression could not help but be slightly stunned. He immediately knew that this zither music was the 7 sins demonic zither that had been in the demon mansion for a long time. He did not expect it to have a change at this moment. He immediately ignored it and called out the zither from the demon mansion. His expression was very serious. One must know that the natal magic treasure was a second life. It was his best friend. One for good, one for bad, they were a whole. Moreover, the attack of the zither was a power that he could not give up. Di Shirtian was confident that he dared to say that he would kill the 10,000 Beasts sect. First, because of the Huangji World Shocking Book, and second, because of the 7 sins divine melody in his hands. Otherwise, he wouldn't have refined a guqin. Swoosh! A strange black light flashed. Within the black light, a mysterious guqin that looked like white jade appeared in front of him. No, it couldn't be said that it was white without a trace of flaw. On the body of the guqin, there were streaks of black lines that looked like stripes that were constantly flowing. It looked very strange. On the zither, the 9 strings kept trembling, and the sound of the zither was very urgent. There was a sense of anxiety in the sound. It's still at the magic treasure level. How can this be? Di-Shir-Tian looked at the zither, and there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. He did not understand what was going on. One must know that the 7 Sins demonic zither's transformation had lasted for more than 40 years. When it reached the transformation, the whole zither had become pitch black, so black that ink was about to drip out. Now, it had regained its snow-white luster, but there were still some black lines that had not disappeared. He guessed that it was probably because of these black lines that the zither had not truly completed its transformation and was promoted to a magical treasure. Why is this happening? It doesn't make sense. The 7 Sins demonic zither was created according to the description in the ancient scroll. Logically speaking, there should not be any problems. He frowned secretly, and his 2 sharp eyes could see through people's hearts. He kept glancing back and forth on the zither, and in his mind, he was also thinking quickly. He kept searching his memory to see if he could find the real reason why it could not be promoted. Unfortunately, the ancient scroll was too mysterious, and the zither that was created was also very mysterious. It was extremely difficult to grasp the mystery, and there was no record of this. Could it be that the 7 Sins really can't be promoted, and has always been a magic treasure? Di-Shir-Tian could not help but feel a little sad. He stared at the zither, and suddenly, there was a flash of light in his eyes. Hey, that's not right. The 7 Sins and the ancient scroll both have grooves on the zither, and each string corresponds to a groove. Could it be that it has something to do with these grooves? His eyes were so sharp that when he glanced back and forth, the 9 grooves that he had ignored suddenly appeared in his mind like a ray of light in the darkness. In his disappointment, he could not help but have a glimmer of hope. Yes, there was a similar groove on the edge of each string on the zither. When these grooves were being refined, Di-Shir-Tian almost did not refine them. Later, even if they were refined, they were just a strange decoration, and he did not find any other use, so he naturally ignored them. He did not care too much. But now it was different. In his sudden disappointment, the existence of these grooves was no less than a glimmer of hope. Could it be that the key to the promotion of the 7 Sins lies in these 9 grooves? The Sakra muttered to himself as he quickly thought of something and said, however, what are these grooves used for? The ancient scroll didn't mention anything about it at all. How exactly do I have to do it? He secretly pondered. If there was really a reason, the grooves were undoubtedly the most suspicious, and the existence of grooves, in general, was undoubtedly used to embellish some decorative things, such as gems, crystals, some pearls, and so on. Wait, pearls? In an instant, Sakra only felt as if a bolt of lightning had flashed through his mind, bringing a trace of astonishing inspiration. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and lightly patted the storage pouch on his waist. In a split second, the pouch flashed with a spiritual light and 2 small but very exquisite jade boxes instantly appeared in his hand. There were restrictions on the jade boxes, but with a light touch of his hand, the restrictions naturally disappeared. He gently opened the 2 jade boxes. Whoosh! He saw that in these 2 jade boxes, one of them instantly burst out endless earthy yellow divine light. When this divine light fell on his body, it was like a clear spring, bringing an indescribable comfort to his body, and the power in his body magically increased by a large margin. Through the divine light, looking at the jade box, there was an earthy yellow spiritual bead that was completely warm and flawless in front of his eyes. Looking at the divine light bursting out of its body, he could see that it was extraordinary. In the other jade box there was a dark and swarthy bead. If it were not for a trace of extremely restrained light flashing on the surface of the bead from time to time, he was afraid that this was just an ordinary bead. Of these two spiritual pearls, one was obtained from an exchange with Medusa many years ago. Its use was to guide the essence of the moon and increase the speed of one's cultivation. Clearly, it was not as simple as it appeared on the surface. The other one was snatched from the hands of the southern barbarian Rat King. This one was very magical. Bathing in the divine light could actually make one's physical body unparalleled in defense and incomparably valiant. Bathing often could also change one's physique, which was very magical. It was just that all this time, he had not had the opportunity to carefully explore the power of these two beads. Now, looking at the grooves on the guqin, a flash of inspiration flashed in his mind, and he could not help but take them out. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 328. Looking back and forth between the pearls in the two jade boxes, a strange expression flashed across his face from time to time. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind. The tens of thousands of scriptures he had read in the Linglong Treasure Pagoda flashed through his mind like flowing water, and a record appeared. Spiritual item analysis. At the beginning of the chaos, the heaven and earth were formed. The power of heaven and earth nurtured all living things, yin and yang, the five elements, lightning and storms. After countless years, spiritual items were born. Spiritual items were pearls, each of them suppressing an area. Obtaining them would allow one to control the power of heaven and earth. Natural creation. Its name was Spiritual Pearl. Spiritual pearls were nurtured by nature, and contained the origin of heaven and earth. Devouring them would allow one to become a Xiantian Dao body. Refining them would allow one to become a supreme treasure. In the number of heaven and earth, 9 was the extreme number. Spiritual pearls were also the same. Thinking of this description in his mind, Di Shirtian was shocked speechless in an instant. His eyes involuntarily widened, and light shot out in all directions, landing on the two pearls in the two jade boxes. He muttered to himself, Earth's spiritual pearl contains the origin of earth, the earth's virtue, and can bear all living things. Bathing in spiritual light, it can wash away the impurities in the body and increase the attributes of the body. Bathing in divine light, it can increase the body's defense. Bathing in divine light for 100 years, the body's attributes will return to one, and one will obtain the body of earth's virtue. Devouring it would allow one to become a Xiantian body of earth's virtue. Refining it into a magic treasure would allow one to control the power of heaven and earth, and one's will would be obeyed. Yes, this must be the 5 elements earth spiritual pearl of the 9 spiritual pearls of heaven and earth. No wonder that Little Mouse had such a powerful body. After comparing the descriptions of the 9 great spirit beads in his memories with the earthen yellow bead in front of him, he couldn't help but come to a realization. When this spirit bead was still enshrined on the altar by the Rat King, it constantly emitted a divine light. It was because of this divine light that the millions of field rats at that time were able to become extremely tough, and their defensive capabilities were frighteningly strong. However, if the bead in front of him was really the legendary Earth Spirit bead, then the Rat King had not truly unearthed its true power. Otherwise, if it was really refined into some kind of magical weapon, its power would be so fierce that even if he went underground, he would not be able to defeat it. If this earth-yellow spiritual pearl is the earth spiritual pearl of the 9 spiritual pearls of the heavens and earth, then is this black spiritual pearl also one of them? He stealthily shifted his gaze to the other pitch-black spiritual pearl. According to the records, The easiest to distinguish among the 9 spiritual pearls were the 5 spiritual pearls that represented the 5 elements. Each of them contained an origin, each with a different miraculous effect. As for the others, they were more reserved. He did not know how to use them, so they were more or less like ordinary precious pearls. Ding dong! Just as he was deep in thought, the sound of the 7 sins demonic zither floating in front of him became more urgent when he took out the 2 jade boxes. There was a sense of urgency in it, as if it was waiting for something. The urgent zither music also interrupted Shirtian's thoughts. His attention fell on the ancient zither again. Looking at the 9 grooves on the ancient zither, a bold guess emerged in his heart. The ancient zither has 9 grooves, and there are 9 kinds of spiritual pearls in the world. Could it be that the function of these grooves is specially used to embed these 9 spiritual pearls? As he thought about it, he couldn't help but feel that it was rather inconceivable. God, the 7 sins demonic zither, was refined according to the refining method in the ancient scroll. The supreme strange formation that could absorb the 7 emotions and 6 desires was already quite amazing. If the 9 spiritual pearls were added, when the 9 spiritual pearls were all embedded on the ancient zither, what kind of realm would the power of the 7 sins reach? One had to know that no matter which spiritual bead it was, they were all priceless treasures. If all of them were to be concentrated on the 7 sins, it would be easy to say that the power would be able to change the world. Well, 7 sins looks like this earth spiritual pearl really has a great attraction to it. I'll try to see if it can help the 7 sins level up. If it works, maybe the zither I refined according to the ancient scroll will be an unparalleled treasure. If it doesn't work, then I can only say that my luck is not good. Shirtian was a decisive person after all. Although he was shocked by the conjecture in his heart, according to the characteristics in his memory, he could not distinguish the black pearl for the time being. However, this earthy yellow pearl was most likely the legendary earth spiritual pearl. No matter how good the earth spiritual pearl was, as long as it could help the 7 sins level up, it would not hurt to embed it. It was just the right time to play its role. After keeping the black pearl, he extended his right hand and cautiously reached for the earth spiritual pearl in the box. As he held the spiritual pearl in his hand, an extremely heavy feeling came from his hand. It was as if this spiritual pearl had 1,000 caddies of weight within it. Its strength seemed to carry the weight of the earth. Holding the earth spiritual pearl in his hand, he looked at the ancient zither and placed it on the groove beside the first string of the ancient zither. Ding dong, as if it felt the aura of the spiritual pearl, the strings on the ancient zither vibrated even more intensely. Gotcha! Without any hesitation, he made up his mind and pressed the earth spiritual pearl gently on the first groove. Suddenly, there was a crisp sound, and the entire 7 sins suddenly erupted with an astonishing force. It flew up into the air and trembled violently. Clang clang! He saw that the black lines on the ancient zither disappeared mysteriously the moment the spiritual bead was inlaid. At the same time, the connection between the groove and the spiritual bead flowed like water, instantly turning the gap between the two into nothing. The spiritual bead was inlaid on the ancient zither without a trace of flaw. It was natural, as if it had originally grown on the ancient zither. It was as if it was a complete item. It was impossible to tell that it was originally 2 different treasures. At the same time, the string on which the spiritual pearl was embedded also underwent a strange change. The originally crystal-clear string suddenly transformed into an earthy yellow color. There were even traces of divine light shining on it, and the rich power of earth flowed endlessly in the string. All the strings that were previously vibrating suddenly stopped at the same time. Clang! Only the string that shone with an earthy yellow light gently opened, and a crisp sound pierced through the air. Instantly, circles of earthy yellow ripples could be seen spreading out in all directions like a tide. This is The next scene immediately made de Chertien's eyes widen involuntarily as he stared at the scene in front of him. Wherever the ripples passed, the ground under his feet trembled softly like seawater. It was as if it was not the ground at all, but a lake. The sturdy ground actually began to shake in such an inconceivable manner due to the sound of the zither. The rumbling from the ground was enough to tell everyone that the scene in front of them was definitely not an illusion. The ground was indeed shaking like dough. Control the origin of Earth? In an instant, a thought flashed through his mind. He reached out and waved at the 7 sins. Immediately, the 7 sins that was full of spirituality shone with traces of demonic spiritual light and fell into his hand with a swoosh. He gently touched the 9 strings and felt that there was a huge and immeasurable power hidden in the earthy yellow string. Once it was released, it had the power to destroy the world. He closed his eyes and immersed his mind into the 7 sins. There was no mistake. The 7 sins had transformed into a magic treasure. Not only did it have a huge power of 7 emotions and 6 desires, but it also had the origin of Earth that had never been seen before. He carefully experienced the changes in it. There was an inexplicable feeling in his heart. He felt that as long as he gently plucked the string, he could grasp the pulse of the earth. He could easily make the power of Earth between heaven and earth attack. Within a radius of 1 mile, he could exert the power of the Earth's spiritual bead to the limit at will. Within this range, de Chertien felt as if he was the master of the Earth and could instantly change the Earth around him into any shape. That feeling, powerful, extremely powerful. It was a power that could control everything. After a long time, de Chertien gradually opened his eyes. There was a faint smile in his eyes. He gently stroked the guqin and did not stay any longer. He turned and walked into the house. 1 year outside the pagoda, 10 years inside the pagoda. Although he had less than a year in the outside world, he could still stay in the tower for 5 to 6 years. He wanted to take advantage of these few years to sort out his own situation, consolidate his cultivation, and properly equip himself from head to toe. In the blink of an eye, nearly a year had passed. On the Spider Lily Island, Silver Hair, the Blood Dragon King, and the other demon kings, as well as the delicate little Yu stood in front of the ancient bridge. They felt like they had not had enough. It's been 5 years. The harvest this time is enough for us to break through to a higher level. The heavenly demon mystery realm is indeed a treasure land of the demon clan. It's a pity that the competition here is too fierce. Silver Hair's words were somewhat sluggish. He looked around and saw that nearly 100,000 demon clan elites had entered. Now there were less than 10,000 of them left. However, it could be predicted that the potential of these demon clan members to be able to survive such a fierce competition was definitely not weak. As long as they went out, most of them would be able to advance further. Those in the demon beast realm could condense inner elixirs. This also meant that the demon clan would have nearly 10,000 more demon clan members who had condensed inner elixirs. This was also another kind of harvest. Old Meng, there's something very strange. Have you guys met Brother D on the island in the past few years? Logically speaking, he left before us in the treasure vault back then. However, I've never seen him on the island. I haven't even heard of any news about him. Could something have happened to him? The golden-winged Bat King revealed a puzzled expression. Yes, this matter is indeed a little strange. However, with his ability, generally speaking, he wouldn't encounter too much danger. Perhaps he had some fortuitous encounter somewhere on the island. Silver Hair frowned slightly. He did not want to think about those terrible things. He only said a comforting sentence. Rumble. At this moment there was another violent roar in the void of the mystery realm. Return to the smoke wave. Countless lightning bolts flashed crazily like raindrop. Before one disappeared, dozens of other lightning bolts bombarded out. The sound of thunder connected together. Looking at the way the lightning flashed, It seemed like it would fall at any time. It looked very terrifying. If it was a group of mortals below, there was no doubt that they would kneel down and pray to the heavens on the spot. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky full of lightning, a huge vortex flashed and appeared in the void again. It spun continuously and swallowed the countless lightning bolts in the void. There was a vast and unparalleled heavens might condensing inside. Looking at the vortex, it was almost exactly the same as the vortex when the Mystery Realm opened on Smoky Wave Island. The Heavenly Monster Mystery Realm has only opened for 5 years. Now that 5 years have passed, it's time for us to go back. Silverhair looked at the vortex above his head without the slightest fear. He said calmly, "Although it's only been 5 years, I still have a bad feeling in my heart, as if something bad is happening." There was a hint of worry in his eyes. "Old Meng, you have it too?" When the Blood Dragon King heard that, he raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, "In the first year we came to the Mystery Realm, I had an inexplicable feeling. I felt uncomfortable all over, as if a disaster was coming. At that time, I thought it was just an illusion of mine. I didn't pay too much attention to it. I didn't expect you to have it too. Looks like it's not that simple." At this moment, he could not help but retract the evil aura on his body and become solemn. No one here was an ordinary person. If it was only one person who felt it, it would not be a big deal. But now they all felt it at the same time. This kind of feeling was called a sudden impulse. If it was not something important, it would definitely not appear. Obviously, something unpredictable was happening. "That's right, I feel it too," Bizian also said softly. "Could it be that something has happened in the purple gold mainland?" Silverhair looked up at the void with a serious expression. There was a hint of deep worry between his brows. "Very likely." The Golden Wing Bat King nodded seriously. Swoosh, swoosh. However, it was clear that the Sky Monster Mystery Land would not stop because of them. The vortex kept spinning, and in the blink of an eye, a powerful suction force was emitted from the vortex. At the same time, huge pillars of light kept falling from the sky, covering the sky and the earth. In the blink of an eye, the entire Spider Lily Island was covered by countless pillars of light. Regardless of whether they had made it out or not, as long as they were on the island, none of them could escape. They were all enveloped by the pillars of light. In the pillars of light, there was a strong devouring force that kept pulling the people inside into the vortex. This time, the devouring force was not as strong as before. It was extremely strong. Even their cultivation was immediately sealed, and they were pulled into the vortex like ordinary people. Just like on Smoky Wave Island, they were all pulled into the vortex and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Silverhair and the others did not put up any resistance and allowed the pillars of light to pull them in. It's finally time. Naturally, the changes in the Mystery Realm could not be hidden from Chertion. His body, which was originally sitting cross-legged in the room, suddenly stood up and opened his eyes. 2 beams of divine light shot out, appearing extremely sharp and domineering. Looking at the void, it was as if he could see through the barrier of the pagoda and see the scene outside. Ever since he met the heavenly demon Ziyu, Chertion had a mysterious connection with the exquisite creation pagoda. He could easily control the power of the pagoda. He could even absorb it into his body. However, the strange thing was that although he could absorb it and use all the power of the pagoda, he did not know why, but he always felt that the exquisite creation pagoda had a strange barrier to him. It was so close to him that it could not merge with his flesh and blood like the 7 sins demonic zither and the tiger's soul saber. They were connected by blood and could even communicate with each other's pulse. However, after thinking about it carefully, he could only attribute it to the fact that he had not completely controlled the exquisite creation pagoda. Good, the day has finally come. Now that I have completely mastered the Imperial True Force, and I am extremely familiar with the 7 Sins Divine Melody, I have not abandoned my saber technique, and it has become even more exquisite. In addition to the few treasures I have chosen this time to protect myself, as long as I leave the mystery realm, I will be able to fly freely in the sky and swim freely in the sea. Tian spoke word by word with an unwavering tone, full of confidence. After obtaining the various treasures left by Ziyue, he was fully equipped with the capital to rise. Once he returned to the southern wilderness, it would be time for him to show his skills. With a thought, his figure flickered and he had already appeared outside the exquisite creation pagoda. Looking at the pagoda, Tian gently stretched out his hand and waved at the pagoda. Suddenly, the originally incomparably huge, exquisite creation pagoda shook violently, and the whole body of the purple-gold divine light flowed, quickly shrinking. Almost in the blink of an eye, it became only the size of a palm and flew to his left hand, full of spirituality. Holding the pagoda, he looked up at the void. He also saw the huge vortex, and more clearly saw that in the pillars of light, whether it was the cultivators or the demon clan, they were easily sucked in. In the blink of an eye they disappeared. Tian, who already had a mysterious connection with the secret realm, naturally knew that this vortex was actually connected to the purple-gold continent. However, it sent them to two places, one was North Night Island, and the other was Smoke Wave Island. The demon clan and the human clan did not appear in the same place. The speed of being sucked in was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, almost all of them had left. Seeing this scene, Tian nodded secretly and said, "It's time to put the entire secret realm into the exquisite creation pagoda according to the method left by Ziyue." After secretly making up his mind, he shook his arm and threw the entire pagoda up, shouting softly, "Exquisite creation, sea accepting all rivers, secret realm heaven and earth, enter my pagoda. Imperial!" His hands danced quickly, and his 10 fingers drew an illusory afterimage in front of him, forming a series of mysterious seals, and hit the pagoda. Boom! The pagoda shook and let out a loud roar, and the purple-gold divine light burst out like a tide. In the divine light, mysterious talismans appeared continuously and flew out in all directions, landing in the void and disappearing mysteriously one by one. But at the same time, the heavenly demon secret realm suddenly trembled. The entire space was shaking violently. Heaven and earth were shaking. "Ha, the day has finally come. Old Ghost Tian, we can finally see the light of day again. Ziyue, that be *tch, didn't lie, there really is an air. Hurry up and take this damn secret realm away. I've had enough of these days." If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 329. Old Fogey Huang Quan, I can smell the scent of freedom. How many years have we waited for this day? How many years have we waited for this day? Finally, this day has come. Although our inner worlds are on the verge of collapse and the spiritual qi in our bodies has dried up, as long as we get out of this predicament, we'll be able to recover our original strength in a few thousand years. Patriarch Tian Silkworm could not help but shriek. They could clearly feel that the heavenly demon's secret realm that had been suppressing them was shaking violently. As the secret realm became unstable, traces of spiritual qi could not help but enter the place where they were suppressed. Tian casually formed a series of mysterious seals that fell into the Linglong treasure pagoda. More and more talismans flew out of the pagoda and entered the secret realm. Rumble! After receiving Ziyu's advice, he already knew that the reason the heavenly demon's secret realm could exist for so long without being destroyed after tens of thousands of years was because of the Linglong treasure pagoda's suppression. For countless years, the Linglong treasure pagoda and the secret realm had an indescribable mysterious connection. Now, under the Linglong treasure pagoda's summons, the secret realm did not resist at all. Countless talismans began to permeate the secret realm. After a while, there was a loud bang. Tion saw with his own eyes that the scenery around him changed abruptly. He was no longer standing on an island, but in a chaotic space filled with violent turbulence. Countless sharp storms were raging around him. Transparent spatial blades were filled with destructive spatial turbulence. Everything that stood in their way was instantly crushed into pieces. Fortunately, the Linglong Treasure Pagoda had unknowingly floated above his head. Threads of purple chi shot out from the pagoda and hung down, gently protecting Tion below. All the space-time turbulence that came into contact with this purple chi was immediately dispersed on the spot and scattered in all directions. It could not even get close to Tion's body. The heavenly demon's secret realm is indeed a small world independent from the purple gold mainland. Now that I've kept the secret realm in the pagoda, it's my turn to be alone in this boundless spatial turbulence. Fortunately, I have the Linglong Treasure Pagoda. Otherwise, as long as I encounter a spacetime storm, even if I don't die, I would lose 3 layers of skin. Tion observed his surroundings. It was grotesque and variegated. It was a highly fantastical and terrifying sight to behold. Searching his memories, he knew that he was within a space-time fragment. One must know that in the Great Thousand World, there was not only the purple gold mainland. The purple gold mainland could be called the land of origin. It was the most expansive world. Now that it had been explored, it was boundless. In addition, there was a territory that had not been explored even in ancient times. How big was the purple gold mainland? Even if the Daluo immortals were to come here, they would not be able to describe it clearly. The purple gold continent was located at the very center of this world. It was the origin world. With the purple gold continent as the center, it continued to spread out. There were countless minor worlds around it. Among these worlds, there were living beings and civilizations. There were also desolate and barren worlds without any living beings. Compared to the purple gold mainland, those small kiliocosms were not very stable in the first place. Perhaps at some point in time they would naturally be annihilated. The destroyed worlds would turn into violent space-time fragments with extremely terrifying destructive power. As for the heavenly demon mystery realm, it could also be regarded as one of the minor worlds. Break. 2 rays of light shot out from his eyes. He glanced around and pointed at the Linglong Treasure Pagoda. The Treasure Pagoda immediately followed his will and violently collided with the space not far away from him. Countless divine lights flashed in the Treasure Pagoda. A space-time crack that could allow one person to pass through suddenly appeared in front of him. It's time to go home. Tion placed the Treasure Pagoda on top of his head again. With a twist of his body, he turned into a stream of light and directly rushed into the crack that was about to close up. After he entered, the crack suddenly disappeared with a roar. No, damn purple moon, you didn't keep your word. You clearly said that as long as we obtained the inheritance from the secret realm, you would let us go. Now you actually sealed me in this broken Linglong Treasure Pagoda. Don't let this old ancestor come out, otherwise I won't let you off. A woman's words cannot be trusted. The more beautiful she is, the more deceitful she is. In the future, even if I believe in cats and dogs, this old ancestor will not believe a woman. Brother Huangquan, it seems that the 2 of us have been sealed in the Linglong Treasure Pagoda. Our future is bleak. When Tion entered the crack, he did not hear 2 mournful roars from an unknown layer of the Linglong Treasure Pagoda. They contained endless resentment that could not be washed away by 3 rivers and 4 seas. Whoosh! Tion came out at just the right time. The moment before the vortex in the void was about to disappear, he stepped on the misty wave island. He opened his eyes and looked around. Sure enough, it was misty and clear water. Taking a deep breath, the fragrance of the mountains and rivers in the air entered his heart and spleen. His mind actually had a feeling of returning home. The faint light smoke condensed on the surrounding lake, the the rich water vapor, a large number of aquatic creatures standing on the island, and the joy of surviving on the faces of the surrounding monsters clearly showed that the place they were now in was not somewhere else, but the Misty Wave Lake, Misty Wave Island that they had been separated from for a long time. "I'm finally back." A sigh that had been brewing in his chest for a long time came out of his mouth. However, this was not a sigh of old age, but a kind of self-confidence full of fighting spirit. His eyes were bright and full of spirit. Looking up at the void, his eyes were unusually deep. "Brother D, you're finally back." At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from behind. At the same time, an evil voice rang in his ears. He turned his head and saw that behind him, Silverhair and the rest were walking towards him. The one who spoke was the Blood Dragon King. "Previously, when I didn't see you on the opposite bank island, I thought that you were tricked by those human cultivators. Now that I see that you're back, my heart can finally be at ease." When he spoke, he did not seem serious, but the concern in his words could be felt. Tion was not a blockhead, so naturally, he could sense it. Looking at Silverhair and the rest's concerned expressions, he could not help but nod and smile faintly. "I'm really sorry to have worried everyone. Back then, when I came out from the treasure vault, I directly found a hidden place on the island and cultivated in seclusion for a few years. After that, I wandered around for a while. Most of the places I went were relatively remote, so it's not surprising that we didn't meet." After pausing for a moment, he saw that they all looked worried, as if they were hiding something in their hearts. He could not help but feel puzzled and asked, looking at everyone's worried expressions, "Could it be that something is not going well?" Tion asked, full of doubts. He did not bring the matter to the secret realm. Even when he was in the exquisite tower, he had paid attention to the opposite bank island whenever he had time. He knew that with their abilities, the harvest on the island could definitely be considered a bountiful harvest. They had found many rare materials and spirit essences. Moreover, even if they did not, with their state of mind and vision, they would not be too worried about it. I don't know why, but we all vaguely feel that something big has happened on the continent. If I was the only one who had this feeling, then it could be said to be an illusion. However, Old Gold, Old Dragon, and the rest all had the same premonition. I suspect that something bad has happened to us during the years we were away on the continent. Unfortunately, we have been in the secret realm for the past 5 years, so we have no idea what has happened on the continent." Silverhair looked at Tion and frowned. He felt inexplicably heavy and a shadow appeared in his heart. He did not even send the wine gourd in his hand to his mouth. Tion could not help but show a hint of horror in his eyes. If he had not listened to Silverhair and the rest, he would not have appreciated it. He had also had this inexplicable premonition when he was in the pagoda. However, at that time, he was immersed in those huge scrolls and had forgotten about it. He had not paid too much attention to it. Now that it was mentioned, he also remembered it. Silverhair, Blood Dragon King, and the rest all had this strange premonition. Even I am no exception. Could it be that something earth-shattering is going to happen? Tion's eyes flashed and various thoughts kept running through his mind. Splash! Right at this moment, the sound of violent waves could be heard from the Misty Wave Lake. The originally calm surface of the lake was instantly swept up with a huge wave. The wave was dozens of feet high. On the wave, there were actually 3 young girls with dragon horns on their heads and wearing gorgeous palace robes standing on it. The 3 young girls all had similar facial features. The first one on the left was the eldest princess of the Misty Wave Dragon Palace, Aoqing, who had made a bet with Tion on the island. The second person behind them was also a princess. She was ranked second and was called Aohong. She was dressed in a fiery red robe and gave off a feeling like she was burning with flames. There was a heroic spirit between her eyebrows. The third one was the youngest princess of the Misty Wave Dragon Palace. She was called Ao Shui. Looking at her expression and body, she was as gentle as water and gave off a very amiable aura. She was only 13 or 14 years old, and was a full-fledged loli. Her small face was tender and could be pinched lightly. Especially her two watery eyes, they were very cute. Behind them was Prime Minister Turtle and a row of armored soldiers. They were as steady as mountains as they stood casually on the water surface. There were only a few hundred shrimp soldiers and crab generals, but they gave off an imposing aura as if they were facing an army of thousands of men and horses. Friends from the demon clan, I am the eldest princess of the Misty Wave Dragon Palace, Ao Qing. These two are my two younger sisters, Ao Hong and Ao Shui. Ao Qing waved her hand and nodded to the demon clan on the island. There was a natural majesty gathering on her body. She said in a deep voice without any fear, "Everyone has just returned from the Mystery Land and is not familiar with the current situation in the Purple Gold mainland. In order to prevent everyone from going out rashly and suffering unnecessary injuries, my father has specially ordered us sisters to explain the current situation in the mainland to everyone." Anger filled the sky. What happened in the mainland? Suffering unnecessary injuries. Could it be that someone is preparing to attack the demon clan? Who ate the bear's heart and leopard's gall? 3 princesses, what is the matter? Tell us quickly. Hearing Ao Qing's words, the tens of thousands of demon clan elites who had survived on the Misty Wave Island immediately widened their eyes and shouted. Those who could be here were all experts in the demonic beast realm. There were many demon kings who had condensed their inner elixirs. Their intelligence was not inferior to any humans. Immediately, many of them sensed the key point from her words. Sure enough, there is an unforeseen event. Di Shirtian and Silverhair looked at each other and saw a dignified look in each other's eyes. From Ao Qing's words, they sensed that something unfavorable to the demon clan had happened in the past few years. Their expressions suddenly became dignified. Their eyes fell on the 3 princesses like torches. Ao Qing and the other 2 were indeed the dragon girls of the Dragon Palace. Their temperament and bearing were really impressive. Even under the gaze of tens of thousands of eyes, they did not show the slightest bit of restraint. Their faces were calm and composed, and they said in an awe-inspiring manner, "Brothers from the demon clan, please be calm and listen to Ao Qing." In their voice, there was a faint power of the heavenly dragon's roar. Even the various discussions on the island were suppressed in an instant. In an instant, it spread to the ears of all the demon clan. Suddenly, the originally chaotic discussion quieted down in an instant. All of them pricked up their ears and looked at Ao Qing, as if they were listening carefully. Ao Qing took a deep breath and said in a heavy voice, "In the 5 years since the heavenly demon's secret realm opened, in the first year, many sects in the immortal cultivation world joined forces with a large number of itinerant cultivators and the major immortal cultivation families on the mainland to launch a sudden attack on the various demon clans' gathering places. Countless demon clans died because of this." She slowly described the entire incident bit by bit. As a bystander, the Dragon clan naturally saw it very clearly. They were also caught off guard by the immortal cultivation world's conspiracy this time. It was already too late for them to help, and a large number of demon clans had already died in the hands of the immortal cultivators. The torrential downpour continued for several months. By the time they received the news, it was already too late to help. They could only sigh helplessly. Huff, huff. Following Ao Qing's voice, there was no noise in the air. There was only the sound of heavy breathing like a windmill, and a terrifying oppressive aura frantically swept out in all directions. Looking at the island, all the demon clans had bloodshot eyes and were panting heavily. Their eyes were filled with violent flames, and endless anger was about to spit out from their eyes and burn everything in front of them. As long as they were lit by a fuse, a destructive force would erupt in an instant. Now, there are only a few demon clans who are still resisting. Many demon clans can only escape into the desolate, barbaric mountain range. Ao Qing's expression was also rather solemn. Seeing that the demons in front of her were burning with anger, she hurriedly said, "The group of immortal cultivators in the immortal cultivation world are not prepared to let you go. A year ago, they even sent people to find my father, wanting to set up an ambush on Yanba Island. However, my father chased them out on the spot and issued a ban. Those cultivators do not dare to come within 1,000 miles of Yanba Lake. Why don't we stay here temporarily? Let's stay here for a while before leaving." Cultivators. What a bunch of shameless villains. They actually attacked our demon clans after we left. If we don't settle this score with them, we will not be demon clans in this lifetime. Yes, let's go out and fight with them. My wife and children are outside. Even if I die, I will not let them have an easy time. They bully demon clans too much. This time, we will not let this group of shameless villains go. The demon clans were furious. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they were panting like oxen. They roared with grief and indignation. The demon clans were enraged. A large group of demon clans took out their weapons one by one. With a whistling sound, a large group of demon clans gathered on the spot and soared into the sky, condensing into a huge demon cloud in midair. It was incomparably black and billowed like a tide. Endless demon chi soared into the sky. Which one of the demon clans here didn't have many relatives and brothers who were related to them? Thinking that these relatives and brothers who were closely related to them had all died in the hands of the immortal cultivators, the anger in their chest was like an undying volcano, erupting fiercely. They couldn't suppress it even if they wanted to. At this time, who would listen to Ao Qing and stay here? If they really stayed here, even they would look down on themselves. The anger in the demon clan's hearts was instantly detonated like a bomb. What a vicious method! What a despicable immortal cultivator! He actually did such a thing behind our backs. If we don't take revenge for this, we have been demon kings for thousands of years in vain. Old Jean, Old Meng, it seems that we brothers haven't shown up for a few years, and some people have begun to forget about us. This time, if we don't turn the world upside down, we won't be able to show our method. The Blood Dragon King's eyes revealed traces of evil light. It was cold, and the evil aura emitted from his body was unprecedentedly strong. It seemed that he was going to devour someone at any time. Old Jean, among us you are the fastest. A faint coldness appeared in Silverhair's eyes. He looked at the golden-winged Bat King, and after a moment of contemplation, he said, "Immediately go to the mountain where Boss and the others live to take a look. If there is a situation, immediately rush back. Now that the other demon clans here are already infuriated, it is impossible to persuade them. I will go with old Jiao and the others to prevent any accidents from happening to the remaining elites of our demon clans." There was a kind of power in his words that made people involuntarily calm down. Immediately, he gave out clear instructions. What a good immortal cultivator! Indra's eyes were ice-cold. He fiercely waved his hand. With a schwa sound, an incomparably snow-white gigantic spirit boat appeared in the air. It was surrounded by white clouds. The floating cloud boat's hull shook as soon as it appeared, and it burst forth with a trace of spiritual aura. "Brother D, you are..." Seeing this, Silverhair hesitated slightly and said, "Everyone, please forgive my rudeness. My subordinates and my wife are all in the southern wilderness. Now that 5 years have passed, I don't know if they're dead or alive. However, no matter what, I have to go back and take a look. Regardless of whether there's something wrong or not, after I've seen them, I'll immediately rush back to meet up with all of you." Di Shirtian raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the southern wilderness with a trace of worry in his eyes. Although he had already left a backup plan for the southern wilderness before he left that year. However, it was only prepared to prevent the Thousand Beasts sect from launching a sudden attack on the southern wilderness. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 330. It was just to temporarily resist the thousand beasts sex cultivators. They would not be able to break through his foundation in the southern wilderness in a short time. While guarding the myriad demon valley, he would also protect the other demon clans in the southern wilderness as much as possible. Among them, the most important ones were naturally Chen Shi and several other demon kings in the Hundred Flowers Valley. Back then, the soul-devouring white bones diagram was seized from the withered bone wasteland. A complete diagram was divided into 8 small pieces. If any part was missing, it would be incomplete, and the power of the diagram would be greatly affected. However, it was also because Sakra Buddha's luck was good back then. Furthermore, his battle prowess was unparalleled, and he was invincible. The 8 small diagrams all fell into his hands as expected. After that, he returned to the Myriad Demon Valley and found time to put them together. The natural connection between them merged together in an instant, forming a complete diagram. The power of the diagram was so strong that it gave him a great surprise. He had tried it before. If he was in control of the diagram, the power of the diagram was enough to trap a powerhouse in the crossing calamity stage, especially the soul-devouring White Bones Emperor. If its power was completely unleashed, even a cultivator in the crossing calamity stage would not be able to touch it. Once the diagram was opened, it would merge with the surrounding heaven and earth. It was connected to the chi meridian of the earth, absorbing all kinds of killing aura and death aura between heaven and earth. Any creature that died in the diagram would be driven by a mysterious force and turn into a skeleton, becoming a member of the skeleton army. It was very domineering. Unless there was a large group of powerhouses with all kinds of powerful magic treasures and spiritual treasures attacking continuously, it was possible to break the formation. Otherwise, only those who had stepped into the immortal realm or above could break the formation with brute force. The most amazing thing about the diagram was that as long as it was set up, it could automatically absorb the evil power between heaven and earth, and then constantly strengthen the diagram's power. It had endless magical uses. It was because of the soul-devouring White Bones diagram in the Myriad Demon Valley that he had the confidence to leave the southern wilderness and go to the heavenly demon secret realm. However, Di Shirtian only expected the first part, but not the second part. He had never expected that the major sects in the world of immortal cultivators would be so crazy as to start a massacre when the elites of the demon clan were not present. It meant that they wanted to completely wipe out the demon clan from the face of the continent. If that was the case, then the attacks on the southern barbarians would definitely not only come from the 10,000 Beast sect. The soul-devouring White Bones diagram is under fierce attack. Di Shirtian had already refined more than half of the array diagram. He carefully sensed the general situation of the array diagram. He didn't know how long the array diagram had been attacked, but it was on the verge of collapse, as if it was in danger of being destroyed at any time. A strong sense of danger entered his mind. Therefore, he had taken out the floating cloud boat without the slightest hesitation, and had wanted to return to the southern barbarian lands immediately. I don't care which sects are besieging my Myriad Demon Valley. When I return, I will let you know how to write the word regret. Di Shirtian's eyes were full of coldness and sharpness, as if they could penetrate people and freeze them at any time. The actions of the immortal cultivation world this time also ignited the anger in his heart in an instant. Now, he was not afraid of falling out with the cultivators. He had the whole heavenly demon secret land as his foundation, the Lingling Pagoda's ability to reverse time and space, and nearly 1,000,000 descendants of the demon clan. All of these were enough for him to establish a force that no one could humiliate in a short time. After listening to Di Shirtian's words, the silver-haired man raised his eyes and stared at him for a long time. Then, He reached out his left hand, and a jade talisman fell into his hand with a flash of light. He handed the jade talisman to Di-Shir-Tian and said, "It's normal for you to worry about your sister-in-law. Here is a voice-transmitting talisman, which contains a trace of my spirit. Take it with you and go back to the southern barbarian land. If something happens, just crush the jade talisman. But if something happens, we will definitely rush there. Remember, the purple gold continent has been attacked by those cultivators. I'm afraid that the remaining elites are only those on the Yanba Island. You have gone further than us on the Wenshin Road, and your future achievements will definitely be above us. Unless it is absolutely necessary, you must not give up your life easily." In the indifferent words, there was a trace of concern. Di-Shir-Tian couldn't help but feel a warm current in his heart. He reached out and took the jade talisman in his hand. For a long time, since the first time they met on the Yanba Island, the silver-haired man had been very close to him. But now, after coming out of the secret land, he had regarded him as an existence at the same level as the 8 great demon kings. This kind of faint brotherhood could be said to be precious. "Be careful!" Di-Shir-Tian didn't say anything emotional. He just glanced at the Blood Flood Dragon King and the others and said blandly. Then, his figure shook, and he turned into a streamer and instantly landed on the bow of the floating cloud boat. With the royal true force under his feet, the whole spirit boat immediately turned around and turned to the direction of the southern barbarian lands. "Wait, I'll go back with you." Just as Sakura was about to steer the floating cloud boat away from Misty Wave Island, a clear and cold voice resounded in the air. "Pata." Amidst the sound of footsteps, a peerless woman wearing rainbow-colored scaled clothes walked out from the island. Casually sizing her up, who else could it be but Medusa? "Come up!" When Di-Shir-Tian saw it, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. In the secret land, he carefully observed, but he didn't find Medusa's figure at that time. It was as if she didn't enter the secret land at all. Of course, it should be impossible that she didn't enter. At that time, he saw her enter the secret land before him. It seemed that she was not as simple as she looked on the surface. But at this time, there was nothing to delve into. He just pondered for a moment, then nodded and said in a deep voice. Medusa immediately got on the boat. Boom! Di-Shir-Tian's mind moved, and the huge body of the floating cloud boat suddenly trembled, twisting the surrounding air. The whole spirit boat, like a floating cloud, turned into a stream of light, like a meteor, chasing the stars and the moon, and rushed in the direction of the southern barbarian lands. The speed was fast, and in the blink of an eye, it had completely disappeared from the sky above the Yanba Island. Looking at the rolling clouds in the void, Silverhair and others were silent for a while. Old Meng, I don't know if you have noticed, but in just a few years, the aura on Brother Shirtian's body has become very strange. It is like an emperor's aura. Also, I can't even see his specific cultivation now. It's like a cloud of fog. I guess I'm afraid that he has other opportunities in the secret land. Blood WRM King touched his chin thoughtfully and said, Silence! Silverhair glanced at Blood WRM King indifferently and spat out a sentence. These things are not for us to inquire about. As long as his strength is stronger, the strength of our monster clan is increasing. Everything else is secondary. After practicing the Book of the King's shocking world, the Sakura naturally exuded an overbearing aura that was full of majesty. Naturally, it couldn't be hidden from his eyes. However, there were some things that could be asked. Once it involved the other party's private matters, it wouldn't be a good thing to ask too much. Maybe it would touch the secret and they would turn against each other. Even if he was curious about these taboo things, he had to keep them to himself. Boom! Compared to the furious scene of the Monster Clan in the Yanba Island, the scene of the Monster Clan in the south was more intense. The roars continued for a few years without stopping for a moment. An illusory world of white bones appeared around the 10,000 Demon Valley. On the 8 huge bone mountains piled up by white bones, the thrones were no longer empty. Powerful white bone kings wearing white bone armor and holding various different weapons were staring coldly at the powerhouses that were rarely seen in the cultivation world. The weakest one was a nascent soul cultivator. Each of the 8 white bone kings was surrounded by no less than 7 or 8 powerhouses. They were fighting fiercely. In the formation map, the white bone kings, who had the combat power of a top nascent soul cultivator, were even more terrifying. Their strength seemed to be endless and would not be exhausted at all. When those cultivators entered the formation map, their combat power was suppressed in an instant and weakened by a part. Even if several people besieged the white bone kings, they could not do anything to them. Ga. On a white bone mountain in the west, a 300-meter-tall king held a huge scythe made of white bones in his hand and slashed forward. In front of the scythe, there were 2 men and 2 women standing in the void. They were all middle-aged, and the 2 women were full of the charm of mature beauties. There was a charm on them. Their laughter could arouse people's hearts. Unconsciously, waves of strong desire surged, and they wanted to directly press them under their bodies and rub them. There was a seductive charm that went deep into their bones. Damn it, junior sister Zhao, that lover of yours really doesn't have any good intentions. He actually brought us here to compete with such an unkillable skeleton. If I had known that this small place in the southern barbarian lands actually had a formation map guarding it, I wouldn't have come here no matter what. The one with peach blossom eyes and a seductive face shouted. There was a pink mist like a peach blossom protecting her body. With a wave of her hand, these pink miasma mysteriously condensed into pink lotus flowers, blocking the ferocious scythe. Sister Tao, let's not talk about this. The formation map we are in now is not simple. If we can get it and comprehend the mysteries in it, we might be able to refine one in the future. This is a priceless treasure. I think after breaking the formation, we can also get a share of it. The other one twisted her snake waist as if she had no bones. Under her control, a pair of yin-yang rings tightly protected her whole body. From time to time, they would blast the white bone kings. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. I support the author and I support the original readers. Chapter 331. Di Shirtian naturally would not rashly rush into the southern barbarian. Now he was not clear about the situation in the southern barbarian. Who knew how many immortal cultivators there were inside? Although he was anxious and eager to return to the southern barbarian, he was very confident that the formation diagram still existed and had not been broken. If it was not for the fact that the distance was too far, and the formation diagram had not been completely refined due to the lack of time, he could only leave a trace of primordial spirit in the diagram. As long as his mind moved, he could control the formation diagram with his mind. The power of the formation diagram would be completely activated. Unfortunately, the southern barbarian was too far away. His mind could only roughly sense the situation of the formation diagram. He knew that the formation diagram had not been broken, but to control it, unless he was already very close to the southern barbarian, otherwise, it was not an ordinary difficulty. Chen Shi. Nothing must happen to you, otherwise. Di Shirtian's eyes burst with a trace of light, and he secretly said in his heart, I will slaughter hundreds of immortal cultivation sects and bury them with you. Taking a deep breath, he did not leave. He stood on the ship, slowly closed his eyes, immersed his mind in his body, and operated the Huangji Shocking World Book. For a time, in the demon mansion, the dark third-grade Black Lotus was constantly rotating at a constant speed. Every time it rotated, it swallowed up the power of desire and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that poured into the demon refining cauldron. If the demon refining cauldron was a lake, then the Black Lotus was growing on the surface of the water, constantly absorbing a steady stream of nutrients to strengthen itself. And there was a light golden Huangji true force spurting out of the Black Lotus, pouring out of the demon mansion. In the 3 open demon veins in the body, it was constantly in a mysterious way, sometimes fast and sometimes slow with a mysterious rhythm. When it was constantly moving, it was also stimulating the demon veins at the same time. If one looked carefully, they would find that these places that were constantly being stimulated by the Huangji true force had an important connection with the surrounding flesh and blood. Every time it beat, it had the same effect on the surrounding flesh and blood. The flesh and blood were constantly being tempered, and there was a trace of Huangji true force in it, making the demon body stronger. If one looked closely, they would discover that on these strange nodes, after being stimulated by the Emperor's true force time and time again, there were small granulation sprouts on the demon veins that seemed to have a life of their own. They were trying their best to extend into the surrounding flesh and blood. For example, the main demon meridian connected to the heart had numerous thin branches that spread out like a net, covering the surrounding flesh and blood. The branches of the main demon meridians were connected to each other to form various acupuncture points, which were called demon acupoints. That was what made the shocking book of the king so special. Even if other demons walked the path of ancient demons, it was impossible for them to create a branch of the demon pulse. At least, before they became a demon saint, they would not be able to do it. But the shocking book of the king had done it. What did it mean for the demon pulse to have more branches? It meant that when the Emperor's true force was operating, it would be able to penetrate more demon pulses and cover a large area of flesh and blood. This kind of operation would allow the body to continuously absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The speed of the power of desire would increase by several times, or even dozens of times. It would also be able to better strengthen the body. It would allow the body to better control every bit of power. It would be able to display a strength that was several times stronger. However, only the first demon meridian had been completely controlled. Of the 3 demon meridians that could be operated, only this one had given birth to small branches. It could be foreseen that as long as all 13 demon meridians were under his control, his entire body would be covered by the branches of the demon meridians. As long as he willed it, a powerful force would instantly appear in any part of his body. At that time, how powerful would he be? When Di Shirtian closed his eyes and operated the cultivation method, a strange sign appeared outside his body. A large amount of extremely evil and frightening dark gas was unceasingly pouring in from all directions. It was not affected by the protective shield of the floating cloud boat in the slightest. All of it was pouring into his body through the countless pores all over his body. It had already been swallowed by the 3 demon meridians that were like vacuum cleaners. There was also a huge amount of multicolored spiritual energy forming a whirlpool in his body. It was also pouring into his body. Ever since the power of desire and demon energy had been promoted by the power of fortune, they had all fused together and transformed into the current Emperor's true force. Regardless of whether it was absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth or the power of desire, the Emperor's true force could be strengthened. The speed of absorption was something that even the heaven-ranked cultivation method could not compare to. It was almost 10 times stronger. When Medusa was driving the floating cloud boat, it was naturally impossible for her to not be aware of the strange situation around her. Her limpid eyes were sizing up Di Shirtian's body. She didn't know why, but she unexpectedly didn't dare to carefully look at the expression on Di Shirtian's face. It was as if there was a kind of invisible power that was involuntarily branding her heart with an irresistible thought. It was as if she was looking at a supreme emperor. This kind of feeling gave her an extremely peculiar feeling. Such a tyrannical aura, I don't know what kind of opportunity he had in the secret territory. The aura that is leaking out from his body is actually so powerful that it can actually affect my mind and give rise to the thought of surrendering to him." Medusa once again looked at the wisps of dark gas that were emerging from the void. A trace of peculiarity unceasingly appeared between her brows. "What exactly is he cultivating?" "Elder sister," she once said that even in ancient times, no one was able to directly absorb this frightening power of desire. Even those spell masters who were most proficient in using the power of desire didn't dare to say that they could directly absorb it. They could only transform the power of desire into a curse brand, and form a curse power within their body. He is unexpectedly able to wantonly absorb it without being affected. She wasn't the only one who didn't understand the matter of Tion being able to absorb the power of desire. As long as one knew about it, they would feel that it was very absurd. However, the facts were right in front of them, and they had no choice but to believe it. Medusa's heart flashed with these thoughts, but she still couldn't figure it out. After a long while, she could only slightly shake her head, and temporarily suppress this matter at the bottom of her heart. Then, she began to drive the floating cloud boat forward with all her strength. Time gradually passed in this silence. The sun was setting in the west. Unknowingly, the two suns had already quietly left before their eyes. During these 2 days, Tion and Medusa took turns to drive the floating cloud boat. They took turns to rest. The floating cloud boat was always at its fastest speed. It streaked across the void like a meteor. However, the purple-gold continent was really too big. It was so big that the Earth of his previous life seemed like an ant in comparison. To put it bluntly, the Misty Wave Lake was as big as half of the Earth. After these 2 days of flying at full speed, they had already arrived at a mountain peak less than 1,000 miles away from the southern wilderness by the night of the second day. The mountain peak didn't have a name, but it towered into the sky. The clouds and mist gathered and scattered at the peak, and floated indeterminately. It seemed like an illusion. Standing on the cloud peak, and overlooking the mountain peak, a kind of feeling naturally emerged in one's heart. It was as if one had climbed to the top of the mountain, and looked down at the other mountains. A spirit boat was anchored on the mountain peak. In the boat, Tion and Medusa didn't speak. They just silently closed their eyes and absorbed the spiritual energy between heaven and earth, and the essence of the sun and the moon. They both knew that if they wanted to, they could arrive at the southern wilderness at any time. However, once they arrived at the southern wilderness, what would appear in front of them would be an earth-shattering battle. Naturally, they wouldn't waste any time. They focused all their attention on recovering their cultivation. During this period of time, they had to push their state to the peak in one fell swoop. At that time, the combat power they could exert would reach their peak. Although they were cultivating in silence, when Tion was cultivating in silence, his mind fiercely escaped from the connection between heaven and earth and instantly probed over. I'd like to see what kind of people are besieging my myriad demon valley." Tion let out a cold snort in his heart. A trace of terrifying pressure inexplicably appeared in his body, but it disappeared in an instant. When he arrived here, the connection between him and the formation suddenly became close, and a feeling of complete control emerged in his heart. From the position in front of him, he could easily control the operation of the formation. This time, it could be said that he was truly enraged. While he was cultivating in silence, he directly separated a trace of his mind and escaped directly to the formation. Boom, boom, boom! Relying on the connection between him and the formation, this kind of conversion was completed almost instantly, and his mind directly entered the formation. Before he could take a closer look at the surrounding scene, the terrifying pressure on his body and a series of fierce roars sounded in the surroundings. Tion let out a cold snort, but strangely, what came out was a strange sound of ga that made people's hearts feel cold. At this time, he suddenly turned into a white bone emperor that was thousands of feet tall. His body was covered with armor formed by white bones, and in his hand there was a huge tiger soul saber. However, this tiger soul was not the one in De Chertien's original hand at all. It was just a saber formed by white bones with the appearance of a tiger soul. Even so, it was still fierce and overbearing. White flames covered the terrifying saber that was thousands of feet long. Above his head, there was a strange pagoda that was also thousands of feet tall. The entire body of the pagoda seemed to be made of gold, and there were countless mysterious cloud seals on it. Golden light kept flowing, mixed with the power of thunder, and pressed down. However, under the pagoda, a huge bone hand was supporting the pagoda with an indomitable posture, and it didn't give in at all. It was like a pillar of heaven, and its entire body exuded a strong aura. De Chertien had directly replaced the consciousness of the White Bone Emperor and controlled this extremely powerful immortal body in one fell swoop. This was not strange. There were 8 pieces of the White Bone soul-devouring diagram, and each piece had a bone mountain. There were a total of 8 mountains, and the center was originally not there. It was formed by the combination of the formation diagrams. The central emperor was actually the key to refining the formation diagram. Once it was refined, it would automatically give birth to this emperor. Inside the emperor's body, there was the primordial spirit imprint of the refiner. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidien.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 332. It could be said that the existence of the White Bone Emperor represented De Chertien's will. It was his incarnation in the formation map. As long as he was willing, he could easily incarnate into the White Bone Emperor at any time and control everything in the formation map, causing the formation map to exert an unparalleled supreme power. If it were not for the fact that his primordial spirit had not been completely imprinted into the Emperor's body, he could have directly controlled the formation map when he was in the mist. Moreover, the White Bone Emperor was De Chertien's incarnation. It was the imprint in the formation map. As long as the Emperor was not destroyed, the formation map would not be occupied by anyone. Thinking about how powerful the White Bone Emperor was, it definitely had the unparalleled power of the peak of the combination realm. In addition, the formation map would increase its own power. Even a tribulation might not be able to do anything to it. He also had an immortal body. The fire seed in his mind would not be extinguished and could be reborn at any time. As long as the formation map was not broken, he was supreme here. Anyone who entered would be suppressed. As soon as De Chertien took control of the White Bone Emperor's body, he naturally felt the enormous power flowing in this body. Standing on the White Bone Mountain, the power under his feet continuously entered his body. He did not have to worry about the problem of his power being exhausted. Ga, those who invade my myriad demon valley will be killed no matter how far away they are. In De Chertien's eyes, the huge lantern-like flames flickered coldly. He raised his head and looked at the pagoda in his hand. He suddenly let out a loud roar. A terrifying force fiercely spewed out from his left hand, which was holding the pagoda, and the pagoda was blown away on the spot. Kill! The saber in his hand, which was exactly the same as Tiger's soul, instantly burst out with scorching white bone flames. The saber was quickly raised, driving the surrounding space. A terrifying scene of space being destroyed appeared on the spot. Amidst countless explosions, the saber unceremoniously slashed down at the pagoda. This slash seemed to be able to split the world. Under the saber, countless grayish-white saber chi swept across the world. The space under the saber shattered, as if it was going to cut the void open. In the saber, there was a domineering emperor's chi and the will of an emperor. In the world, all the land belonged to the emperor, and all the people who fell to the ground were the emperor's subjects. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will die. Those who betray me will be killed without mercy. Bang! Tion swung his blade with the wrath of an emperor, causing the space under the blade to tremble. This was a blade that was above everything else. It was the ultimate embodiment of Tian's aura of supremacy. How domineering! The pagoda had already been blasted out. When the saber landed on the pagoda, a mournful cry came from the pagoda. The golden light that appeared on the surface instantly burst forth with an unprecedentedly strong light, but it immediately retracted, and the light became incomparably dim. Poof! The pagoda had suffered such a heavy blow in the blink of an eye. From the moment Tian began his attack to the moment his saber landed on the pagoda, only a short 2 to 3 seconds had passed. No one had expected such a huge change to occur. Outside the formation was a middle-aged man in a black robe. His face was dignified, and he was riding a strange bird with 9 heads. Judging from his aura, there was a kind of arrogance, as if he was above thousands of people and had supreme power in his hands. It made people not dare to look at him easily. But at this moment, his body strangely seemed to have been devoured by lightning, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His face immediately turned from red to pale, and his eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the colossal white bone emperor in the formation. He muttered to himself, "How is this possible? This white bone emperor has never taken the initiative to attack. How can it suddenly erupt with such terrifying combat strength? Also, just now, it opened its mouth to speak?" His eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. All along, the White Bone Emperor had been passive and had never taken the initiative to attack. But even so, it had already displayed incomparably powerful strength. Therefore, it was just right to use this demon-subduing pagoda to restrain it. He didn't expect such a shocking change to happen at all. Ga. Tian slashed the pagoda away with his saber, and turned his head to look around. He saw that a large number of the skeleton army in the formation had almost been wiped out, and only a few were still resisting. There were thousands of elite immortal cultivators in the formation, and the weakest was at the foundation establishment stage. These cultivators were all gathered in the formation, while the nascent soul stage cultivators were constantly besieging the 8 kings. Now these kings were all in a sorry state. They were all suppressed at a disadvantage. "All of you who enter my formation must die." Sakra's cold words directly filled the entire array diagram. As soon as his voice fell, the entire array diagram suddenly changed. In an instant, countless grayish-white chi of death emerged and filled the entire array diagram, completely blocking the exit of the array diagram and isolating it from the outside world. Not good! As soon as the formation changed, immediately, whether it was the cultivators inside or outside the formation, a thought appeared in their minds at the same time. They only felt that the aura of the formation instantly became unfathomable, and the connection with the heaven and earth could not be isolated. It completely merged with the entire heaven and earth, and an endless amount of power continuously entered the formation from the earth. Especially the immortal cultivators inside the formation, they almost noticed that something was wrong on the spot. All the cultivators who were besieging the White Bone Emperor used their methods to escape from the battle and return to the place where the cultivators gathered. There were a total of 40 nascent soul stage cultivators. In addition, thousands of elite cultivators were tightly huddled together. Their eyes revealed a trace of horror as they looked around, especially when they discovered that the sudden change in the formation had completely isolated their connection with the outside of the formation. "We've been fooled. We should have thought of it earlier. How could the formation only have such a little ability? It foolishly allowed us to surround and kill it." Madame Tao's face suddenly changed, and she said with regret, "Senior sister, I can't feel the outside of the formation anymore. I'm afraid we've completely fallen into the space of the formation and cut off our connection with the outside world. I'm afraid we're in big trouble this time. Zhao Ji's face also changed greatly. Enter my formation, all of you will die. When these words reached her ears, she unconsciously appeared a trace of fear. Formation, this was the embodiment of the extreme of the formation Tao. Di Shirtian watched coldly from the sidelines. He waved his saber at the entire formation and spat out a sentence that made the cultivators in the formation even more chilling. In the formation, where the white bones cover, the undead will not be extinguished, and the fire will not be extinguished. Countless white bone flames fell from the saber and landed on the white bone ground, sinking into it in an instant. Suddenly, an incredible scene appeared. Kacha! Among the countless white bones, a terrible sound of bones colliding rang out one after another. Pale white bone hands rose from under the white bones one after another. Then the head, then the body quickly climbed out from under the white bones. Upon closer inspection, it was a skeleton army that flashed with the faint light of the fire seed in their minds. Team after team, they were resurrected continuously. They raised their heads to look at Di Shirtian, who was standing on the mountain of bones. Their eyes were filled with awe as they lined up neatly. They gathered into a square formation, holding sabers in their hands, bows and arrows, and their bodies exuded a strong aura of death. An invisible pressure was emitted from their bodies, intimidating the hearts of people. Bang, bang, bang! The 8 white bone kings sat down from their respective thrones and stood at the front of the skeleton legion. They left a mark of Di Shirtian in their hearts. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 333. Not good. The formation diagram is changing. The owner of this formation diagram is controlling its operation. How despicable and cunning. He's been keeping a low profile for 5 whole years. Now that we've gathered more than half of our nascent soul cultivators, 2 of whom are in the astral body stage and 1 of whom is in the body integration stage, he's taking advantage of our moment of carelessness to make a move. Outside the formation diagram, the cultivator who had been riding on the strange 9-headed bird forcefully suppressed the backlash in his body. Ignoring the crimson trail of blood at the corner of his mouth, he circulated his divine sense and recalled the violently shaking demon subduing pagoda. After shrinking it, he held it in his hand. Only then did he have time to observe the changes in the formation diagram. This cultivator was from the Myriad Beast sect, and his name was Xiaoyuan. There were 10 elders in the Myriad Beast sect. As for how the elders came to be, it was very simple. As long as you were a member of the sect, once you made a breakthrough from the nascent soul stage to the leaving aperture stage, you would naturally be promoted to become an elder and receive the treatment that an elder should receive. Among these elders, all of the cultivators above the transcendence tribulation stage had mysteriously left, so the body integration stage cultivators were the most powerful. Xiaoyuan was ranked 3rd among the 10 great elders. His cultivation base was already at the mid-body integration stage. Moreover, even among the cultivators who entered the southern barbarian lands, he was also one of the top existences. There were only 2 body integration stage experts in the southern wilderness. One of them was from the Yin-Yang Union sect and was called the 1000 Illusion Demoness. She was definitely as strong as Xiaoyuan. Xiaoyuan had only rushed over after Yang Xian had sent out the news. As soon as he arrived, he took over control of the Yaoxiling Pagoda. With a body integration stage expert like him controlling the pagoda, the power he could unleash was naturally on a completely different level compared to Yang Xian's. He had forcibly suppressed the White Bone Emperor under the pagoda for a full 5 years, and it was only now that he was finally able to break free. Martial Uncle Shao, what should we do now? There are over 1,000 disciples trapped in the formation. These disciples are all the elites of the sect, so we have to save them no matter what. Otherwise, the losses to the sect this time will be far too great. Yang Xian quickly arrived before Xiao Yuan. There was a sliver of worry in his voice as he spoke respectfully. Among the thousands of cultivators in the formation, thousands of them were from the 10,000 Beast sect. There was also Zhao Ji, who had a very ambiguous relationship with him. Normally, they would flirt with each other. No one would believe that there was nothing going on between them. We're done for. A scheme. This is definitely a scheme of the Yao race. How despicable. They actually used a passive method to paralyze us. The devil race is so king cunning. For a moment, both the cultivators outside the formation and the cultivators inside the formation began to curse at the same time. Their eyes were filled with horror. However, it seemed that when they were cursing and scolding, they had never thought that with their actions towards the demon race, their wanton actions of encircling and killing the demon race, what right did they have to say the word despicable? The formation diagram is the ultimate embodiment of the way of formations. It contains endless mysteries. It seems that in the past, the formation diagram did not completely unleash its full power and could only passively resist our attack. Now, the demon clan is activating the formation diagram from the inside, using the formation diagram's unique ability to form a space to trap everyone inside. Furthermore, the formation diagram is in harmony with the heavens and earth. Its power is immeasurable. The only thing we can do now is to attack the formation diagram with our strongest attacks from the outside and see if we can open up a passage. At the end of the day, Xiao Yuan was one of the most powerful cultivators on the Zijin continent. Ever since he began cultivating, he had probably lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. He was extremely experienced and had studied the formation diagram for 5 years. In a flash, he had already guessed the changes in the formation diagram. Everyone, no matter how powerful the formation diagram is, it will be destroyed one day. Right now there are still several thousand of our companions inside. Let's gather our strength together and unleash our most powerful attacks in the same direction. Everyone here is a prodigy of the sect. Are we really going to be stopped by a mere formation diagram? Yang Xian's eyes flickered and he suddenly shouted behind him. His voice was infused with true essence and instantly drowned out the chaotic scene before him, reaching everyone's ears. Outside the formation diagram, there were no less than 5,000 cultivators, including several dozen nascent soul cultivators. When this force was gathered together, it was definitely powerful. Under Yang Xian's call, the panicked cultivators seemed to have found a target and they couldn't help but respond in unison. That's right. Attack and break this formation diagram. Everyone attack at the same time. I don't believe that a formation diagram can withstand the power of several thousand of us. Those who were able to come here were all elite disciples of some sect. Their quality and battle instincts were extremely outstanding. All of them began to shout. At this moment, Xiao Yuan naturally waved his hand and made the several thousand people temporarily quiet down. With a dignified expression, he said in a deep voice, "Since that's the case, everyone gather their strength together and pour it all into the demon-subduing pagoda, the most precious treasure of the 1,000 Beasts sect. With the power of the pagoda, even if it's a formation diagram, it can still blast a passage out." With a glare, a powerful aura emerged from his body and swept out. Feeling this powerful deterrence, how could anyone have the slightest objection? All of them nodded in agreement. Not to mention the outside of the formation diagram. On the other hand, Di Shirtian had now transformed into the White Bone Emperor. Although the power in this body was surging, and he felt like the world was in his grasp in the formation diagram, he did not get carried away at all because of this. He coldly looked at the skeleton warriors that were divided into 8 legions in front of him and nodded to himself. Facing the 3,000 cultivators who were gathered together, he raised the battle saber in his hand and waved it forward with full force. He allowed the battle saber to tear the space in front of him and let out a loud roar, "Kill! Ga!" As soon as Sacre gave the order, the flames in the eyes of the 8 white-boned sovereigns standing at the front suddenly surged, bursting out with traces of fighting spirit. Boom, boom, boom. The skeleton warriors let out strange cries that sent chills down people's spines. Their eyes burned with hollow flames as they followed behind their respective monarch. They spewed out a strong aura of death towards the thousands of cultivators trapped in the array diagram and rushed towards those people. Especially the kings. When they walked, they stepped on the white bones. It was as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. The terrifying rumbling was mixed with a terrifying aura. All of a sudden, from all directions, they were divided into 8 battle formations, trapping all the cultivators in the middle. The situation was reversed on the spot. From the cultivators besieging these white bone emperors to the skeleton legion's sudden counterattack, it had only taken a few breaths of time. Not good, don't let us surround you. Concentrate our strength and attack in one direction. Hurry up and think of a way to break the formation diagram. When they saw the white bone emperor leading the skeleton warriors to attack, all the cultivators suddenly became nervous. Some of them were quick-witted and shouted, "Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh." However, on the east side, a king with a white bone bow led 3,000 skeleton warriors who were also archers to stop hundreds of meters away from the cultivators. He pulled the bow in his hand and pulled it to a full moon. Especially the white bone emperor, when he pulled the huge bow, his whole body was full of unparalleled strength. The bow was pulled to a full moon on the spot. At the same time, on the bowstring, a white bone arrow flashing with white bone fire mysteriously appeared. The tip of the arrow pointed at the nascent soul stage cultivator in the front. The arrow condensed the whole body's essence, chi, and spirit, locking the other party at a time. The other skeleton archers also aimed the bows in their hands at their respective targets at the same time. Only to hear the sound of the bowstring, the white bone arrow shot into the cultivators like locusts. This group of cultivators stood densely together. There was no place to dodge, especially the nascent soul stage cultivator that the white bone emperor had locked onto. Facing the unbelievably fast divine arrow, he didn't even have time to react. He could only block with a flying sword in front of him. However, under that sharp arrow, even the flying sword was instantly piercing through his heart. That unlucky guy, in the end, had a look of disbelief in his eyes. Obviously, he had never thought that he would be killed by a white bone emperor in the formation diagram. Those locust-like sharp arrows also instantly erupted with terrifying lethality. Although the cultivators in the encirclement could be considered elites, under the dense rain of arrows, they were like a group of mortals. They could only passively use the magic treasures in their hands and various spirit talismans to increase their defense. However, there were still hundreds of cultivators who were shot to death on the spot. They fell to the ground, their bodies full of shocking arrows. Bang bang! As soon as the arrow rain stopped, the other monarchs immediately arrived. A monarch with a battle sword in his hand saw the group of nascent soul cultivators, and the fire in his eyes violently jumped. He swung his sword and slashed out like a heavenly punishment. The one he slashed at was Tao Sanyang. Tao Sanyang must be rich in experience. Before the battle sword arrived, she could already feel the tearing force in the air. Without even thinking, the peach blossom thousand desire miasma outside her became unprecedentedly gorgeous. Thousand desire lotus flowers constantly appeared. With a soft shout, hundreds of them bombarded the battle sword. Bang bang bang! Every thousand desire lotus flower was incomparably mysterious. The fragrance it emitted was the strongest aphrodisiac, and the leaves were the sharpest blades. If the lotus flower itself exploded, It was no less than a full-strength attack from a nascent soul cultivator. It appeared under the sword, and before it could touch the sword, it exploded under Madame Tao Sanyang's control. A series of explosions sounded like hundreds of tons of explosives exploding on the spot. The incomparably violent force immediately swept the battle sword in, and a huge destructive force rushed through the sword into the monarch's body. Gaga! When the monarch unleashed its true power and began to attack, it was definitely unimaginably terrifying. With a strange cry, the battle sword in its hand shook, domineeringly shaking off the destructive force around it. When the first attack failed, the flames in its eyes flickered even more fiercely. It swung the sword a second time at Tao Sanyang. At the same time, the skeleton warriors behind it ferociously and fearlessly let out strange cries as they pounced on the group of cultivators. The remaining white bone monarchs also charged into the battle. Those who die in the formation will have their souls immortal and become fire seeds. The high and mighty Sakra watched the battle below. The enraged monarch and the skeleton army didn't fear death at all. In the formation diagram, their battle prowess had increased by God knows how many times. Their numbers were also several times more than the cultivators. Under the endless attacks, they were like a small boat in the ocean. But Di Shirtian watched coldly and suddenly said something strange. However, as soon as his voice fell, he saw that among the cultivators who had just died in the hands of the skeleton warriors, the whole body and flesh disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. They turned into a mass of gray death chi and merged into the formation. And those cultivators were only left with a pile of bones. Their souls were all pulled out. Under an inexplicable force, these souls kept condensing strangely and turned into balls of dark green fire seeds. In less than a few breaths, the skeleton warriors crawled out of the bones one after another and turned into new undead spirit. It was just that they didn't have their original consciousness, only endless loyalty to Di Shirtian. They picked up their weapons and pounced on their original companions. This scene was really quite terrifying. This could be seen from the looks in the eyes of those cultivators. Go to hell! Just at this moment, behind Sakra, a seductive woman with a head of white hair suddenly rushed into the air. A pink ribbon nimbly followed the spirit snake that came out of the cave, but the edges of both sides were sharper than any blade and scarier. The pink ribbon shook, and even the surrounding space showed a distorted scene. It was slender and flexible and rolled toward his head. Its purpose was obvious. It wanted to directly bombard Di Shirtian's head. Because, whether it was the king or the emperor, even the other undead creatures, they were all fire seeds. The fire seeds existed in the mind, so it was destined that the head would be the most fatal position. This king has been waiting for you for a long time. The moment the pink ribbon appeared, Di Shirtian turned his body fiercely. Looking at the incomparably soft ribbon, the saber in his hand followed the force of the turn and slashed out fiercely. There was an indomitable and unstoppable domineering aura in the saber. Heaven block, heaven cut, earth block, earth split. In this world, there was a saying that softness could overcome hardness. However, his saber technique was completely fierce and domineering. What did it mean to overcome hardness with softness? If you were really subdued, it would only be because your hardness and domineering were not strong enough. You had to be so domineering that no softness could resist, dissolve, or dispel it. That was the true definition of strength. These were all just a contest of strength. If softness and hardness were to be described, there was no doubt that the ribbon was a kind of extreme softness, and Di Shirtian's saber was extremely fierce and domineering. Wherever the saber went, the space shook violently, showing signs of collapse. Bang! The ribbon and saber collided on the spot, and a terrible wave of air swept the surrounding air of death away. Even the mountain of bones below shook violently. At the location of the collision, strange circles of ripples appeared in the air. With a loud bang, the white-haired woman's body suddenly trembled. The ribbon quickly retracted. Humph, everything in the formation diagram is under my control. Do you think I won't know just because you're hiding behind me? What a joke. A body integration cultivator? Don't even think about leaving the formation diagram in one piece. Tion spat out a cold disdain. The formation diagram was like his body. As long as he willed it, every corner of it would appear clearly in his mind. Nothing could escape his senses. From the beginning, he already knew that there was a powerhouse hiding behind him. It seemed like she was looking for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. However, he did not care at all. He did not point it out at all. He was playing a game of cat and mouse. Boom, boom, boom! He broke the white-haired woman's attack with a single saber strike. Without hesitation, he stepped into the void. His huge body was like a mountain, filled with unimaginable pressure. Kill! Tion swung his saber. After practicing the basic saber technique countless times, a casual swing of his saber carried a mysterious charm. The white-haired woman was indeed very beautiful. She had a kind of seductive beauty. She was so beautiful that she was charming. The various temperaments on her body constantly changed, making people subconsciously want to immerse themselves in her charm. This woman was the strongest person in the formation diagram. She was called the Thousand Illusions which, sensing the fierce aura contained in the saber, the thousand illusions which twisted her waist, waved the ribbon in her hand, and danced in the void just like that. Her dance posture was full of grace. Her beautiful and illusory body mysteriously split into two, and then into three. In the blink of an eye, there were 1,000 of them. Each of them was her, but each of them had a different posture. She was wearing a layer of gauze that was as thin as a cicada's wing. It gently covered some of her private parts. As she danced, the gauze could not hide the beauty of her body. The beauty was faintly discernible. Every move, every smile, and every movement could tug at one's heartstrings. It made one's eyes turn red and desire burst forth. Following the movements of the dance, waves of mysterious energy were emitted continuously, filling up the entire void. This kind of dance made one's blood boil. Even a blind person could open his eyes again. Especially the 1,000 women. They had the same face, but in an instant, they put on all kinds of different seductive postures. As long as one was conscious and had not completely forgotten their feelings, even those without spirituality would pounce on them on the spot. On her wrist there were a few mysterious bells. As she danced, they kept ringing. It also made one's mind instantly filled with all kinds of seductive scenes. Although Tion was now in the body of the White Bone Emperor, his consciousness and mind were his own. When he saw this strange dance, an inexplicable strong desire appeared in his mind. It was not just his eyes. Even in his mind, countless seductive figures appeared. This dance was called the Thousand Illusions Sky Demon Dance. You're still a little lacking if you want to arouse my desire. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.